Good evening, everyone. If I can call this meeting to order. This evening, although we have a lengthy agenda, we have only two that we're going to be following. We have the Committee of the Whole agenda, and that will be followed by our council meeting. So with that, I'm going to start the evening off with a prayer by Councillor Ron Bodner, followed by our national anthem led by Mr. Joe Longfellow. Councillor Bodner.
Dear Lord, we ask for your guidance as we meet here tonight. Help us make wise and thoughtful decisions that will benefit our city and its residents. Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Joel. As always, well done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
But that was creative. I told Joe, I says, you got to stop saying the same thing over. You got to get creative. You got creative.
He just shook his head.
Oh, he's priceless. Always a pleasure to have Joel here. Members of council, or actually, Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, there are no addendum items.
Thanks, Annette. Members of council, I need a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Doucette, are there any questions or comments to that motion? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Are there any disclosures of interest? With none, we'll move on to items requiring separate discussion. Members? Councillor Elliott? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to let everybody else have a chance, but 2, 5, 7, 10, 12, 13, and 14.
Any further? They're all pulled? Well done, Dave. If I can also ask a councillor to lift item 12. Did you say 12 too? Okay. And you got 13. Okay, good. You got 14. Great. Renee, you didn't want to speak on that if you didn't have to? You're fine? So it shouldn't. Councillor Bodner, go ahead.
Councillor Elliott, 17. It says council direction required on that one. He has one you.
Did you want that lifted, Ange?
Actually, I don't need it lifted.
I think there's a resolution to it on your desk this evening, I believe. Is there?
Yeah.
The email that from Mr. Howe? Oh, I'm sorry, from Mr. Lee? Was that the issue?
Just so she can report on the issue.
Okay.
I can lift it.
You gonna lift it? Okay, that's great. Thanks, Ange. So Dave, you sure you didn't want to just lift the whole agenda?
I was hoping somebody else was going to go first, and I was just going to.
Just wanted to make sure that they're all lifted that. I know.
Lift another item for our museum fund, but they don't want to speak. So.
They don't want to speak? Okay. So if that's it, members, that's fine. So we'll now move on to the remainder of the items. I think there's one, maybe two. If I could have a mover and I'm blaming it all on you this evening, Councillor Elliott. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bodner, seconded by Councillor Butters. there any questions or comments to the remainder of the agenda? With none, your pleasure, members. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. We'll now move on to presentations. Our first presentation this evening is from Chief Tom Cartwright, introduction of new recruits and their instructors. Chief Cartwright, as always, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, senior staff, members in the audience, and viewing audience. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. We don't do these every year, but every so often we do recruit more volunteer firefighters. This evening we have 9 new people that have joined our department as of last night at midnight. They've gone through some extensive training over the last 5 to 6 months, in excess of 100 hours of training to get them in a position where they can start their probationary time. So the intent tonight is to introduce them to both council and the members within the audience and senior staff. And I've also got a presentation to make to each of them. And the mayor and the CAO are going to assist me with that. The CAO didn't know that until tonight, neither did the mayor, so I surprised them with that little tidbit. I would also like to acknowledge the fact that the instructors on this particular course for these individuals are members of our department currently, and a majority of their time was volunteered to put this course together. Joe Henry in particular was the lead. He's a full-time captain with the department, put an extensive amount of time in the training efforts of these individuals. I've got Mike Bendier here this evening. I think Doug Steers is here this evening. Tim Graham's here, and I'm not sure, I don't see Joe in the audience, but nonetheless, that's 3 of the people that did do a lot of training with these individuals. It's important to remember that they basically had no knowledge of the fire service coming in to the point where they're going to, as of last night, respond to calls. In fact, I believe you had your first call today. Some of you did. Turned out to be a not very important call, but nonetheless, it was their first call. And I'm sure they sat on their pagers all night anxiously waiting for it to go off, but it didn't happen during the night. So, Your Worship and Mr. Heil, if you want to come forward and help me with this. The first recruit I'm going to bring forward is Ryan Adams, if you would, please. Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Chad Bernarski. Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard, Chad. Good job.
Jesse Chamberlain. Congratulations. Thanks.
Welcome aboard. Thank you. Welcome aboard, Jess. Congratulations. Well done.
Jordan Churchill.
Congratulations, Jordan. Welcome aboard.
How do you say that? Christopher Hummel? Hummel? Christopher Hummel, is it? Hummel?
You know.
Come on up. I know the first name. No. First name's only. Chris.
We know the last name. I don't know the first name.
Good job, Chris. Congratulations. Well done. Welcome aboard.
If that's the worst I call him, he's lucky. Kevin Kalali.
Welcome
to meet
aboard,
you.
Kevin. Congratulations. Well done.
Derek McCabe.
Welcome very much. Good job, Derek. Congratulations.
Curtis Wilcox. Curtis.
Welcome, Curtis.
Good job,
Nice to meet
Curtis.
you, too.
Welcome aboard.
And Tyler Wright.
Watch your head, Tyler. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks very much. That's it. Thank you, Your Worship, Mr. Heil. As you can see, some of these lads are fairly physically fit, and we like to think that they're going to become leaders of this department in the future. So, again, congratulations, and thanks very much for your efforts, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief, and I do as well on behalf of council, and more importantly, on behalf of the entire community. I want to welcome you guys on the team, and welcome aboard. As the Chief mentioned, and rightly so, you can see they're physically fit and ready to go. I'm sure you're all standing by those pages waiting for that thing to go off, but I think we can safely say that we're in good hands with you guys aboard. And once again, congratulations and thank you. Thank you for your time as volunteers, as members of the community. I know we have about 3 or 4 imports there, but and to you guys, welcome to Port Colborne. But and to the rest of you, those that were born and raised here, that's great to see you giving back to your community. And we truly look forward to your participation in upcoming, although we don't want to see a lot of those incidents, or any, as a matter of fact, but having you folks tend to those incidents here in the community and beyond is very comforting. So congratulations, and once again, welcome aboard. Great job. Our next presentation is Ms. Joanne Ferriccioli, Health Services Coordinator for the City of Port Colborne, and Dr. Jeff Remington and Dr. Amanda Bell. Is Amanda here? She's working, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. These folks are here to present the Healthy Living poster winning entry at the national competition. Joanne, I don't want to steal your thunder, so I'm going to leave it to you. The floor is yours.
Well, I don't want to steal Natalie and Yasmin's thunder either, so I'll just give a brief introduction as to what they're going to talk about tonight. Natalie and Yasmin are both DeGroote Niagara Campus School of Medicine students. They've just completing their first year. Dr. Remington is Natalie's faculty advisor, and Dr. Amanda Bell is the undergraduate pre-clerkship curriculum coordinator. So we have a very large Port Colborne presence within the medical school. So I think it's really, it was really important that they come here tonight to tell you what they've done and the award that they've been honored. They were present at the Society of Rural Physicians of Canada, and they did a poster presentation. We've been working on this for quite some time, and it was the C2C2C conference in Victoria, British Columbia this past April. But I don't want to steal their thunder as to what they did and the poster that they ended up with. But I do want you to know that the poster is going to be hanging, the first to be hung in the new home of the school, of the medical school at Brock University. And this poster is going to be hung on the wall there. So I encourage everyone to go and see it because it's quite the honor. But I'll let them tell you what, in fact, they did win. And then I think Dr. Remington would like to say a few words as well. So. I'll leave it to Natalie and Yasmin now.
Thank you, Joanne. Ladies, welcome.
So as Joanne said, we did attend the conference, and we were honored to win the first place prize. Myself and Natalie both share an interest in rural medicine, and we were kind of wondering how we could kind of make find concrete ways to impact the community in the rural setting. And so we came up with the idea of creating an assessment tool for the built environment. And the built environment of a community is just generally the physical environment and how it's constructed by a community. And there's many ways that you can impact the built environment through initiatives or public policy that can impact health as well. So just generally, we were going to go through some of the factors that we found. We searched the literature and compiled a list of factors that we found had the greatest impact on health. And so first of all is the physical environment of community, the air, water, and land quality. That greatly impacts health, and it needs to be monitored. Next, access to health care is a big concern in rural communities. There's obviously disparities in access to health care, and the average commute for rural community members to travel for healthcare is around 60 kilometers, which is significant. Next, we looked at facilitation of physical activity. We know that that has probably the most well-known link to the built environment, building of parks and adequate roadways and things like that to kind of facilitate physical activity in a community. We also looked at nutrition and food security. Obviously, having grocery stores and access to those kind of fresh fresh and healthy foods are important to a community, as obesity rates are on the rise, and there is a disparity between, there's higher obesity rates in rural communities, especially in youth, than in urban communities. So,
Thanks. So some of the factors that we had sort of divided kind of the things based that we wanted to look at sort of based on our interests. So those were the items that Yasmin looked into specifically. And some of the things that I found noteworthy, again, looking at the literature, was injury prevention and health promotion, and that referred to safety in the workplace, home, and community. Exposure to ultraviolet light, whether it's incidental, so through recreational activities out on the beach or just through walking or in the workplace, or whether it's deliberate. And so a specific example of that was tanning beds. And then affordable and secure housing, and that included long-term and emergency options, especially for women and children. And inclusion and connectivity, and that was supportive services and accessibility for all community members to be able to access those. So our long-term goal for the project is that we'll have an online version of the survey for community leaders and community planners to fill out the survey, and then the results of the survey will lead directly to an online database of relevant projects that have been either tested in communities or we found that have been verified either through some sort of evidence-based process. And I think it's important to note that a lot of the projects that we'd like to include in that database will be based in Port Colborne. So a few notes that we would like to make just before we were to leave would be about Joanne. So from the first day of our project, Joanne Ferracoli has been a tremendous professional and personal resource for us. Her insight and perspective took us much farther in our project than we could have otherwise gotten. And it is because of her that we view Port Colborne as a model community. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Dr. Remington, welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, senior staff. I think once again it's an opportunity to show off and highlight the wonderful fruits of our labors over the years in promoting medical education in our community. I mean, these young ladies, first-year medical students at the New Niagara campus, Natalie, who is my advisee, and Yasmin, I think have done a tremendous job in making Port Colborne very proud, and that they go to Victoria, British Columbia, and they win first place in a national contest, highlighting sustainable healthcare and highlighting the city of Port Colborne. I think that deserves a lot of credit, and I think, again, as the young ladies have said, a lot of credit goes to Joanne, who tirelessly works behind the scenes, working with our young people, working with our students, working with our health programs, and again, to council and to staff for supporting these efforts now for many years. A big thank you, but like a proud father, I'm beaming with pride that they've come back with this award. And again, I think it's just another great feather in our cap for what we do here in Little Port Colborne with rural healthcare and with rural medical education. So congratulations, young ladies. Thank you, Joanne, and thank you to council.
Congratulations. Great job. And Joanne, as always, thank you. And Dr. Remington, thank you. It's pretty work. Well, thank you, folks. It's, once again, contributions from members of the community, professional community, students, making us proud. So to all of you, ladies, as well as Dr. Remington, thank you very much. Once again, you've made the city of Port Colborne proud with respect to healthcare and really bringing healthcare out, not only here throughout the region, but nationally throughout Canada. So great job. I see Joanne's beaming with that smile. Our last presentation of the evening is one of recognition for an individual, a gentleman, quite frankly, that is going to be leaving us, retiring, not leaving us, but retiring. Actually already has retired as of May 31st, but someone that I've become very close to, not only as or within a working relationship, but also as a friend, because of what he's been able to accomplish throughout the past many years as both a police officer here in the region, but more importantly as an individual of our community. It is my privilege this evening to recognize one of our finest at the time of his retirement. And the individual I'm speaking of, and I'm going to call him up here, is Staff Sergeant Tim Wolichka. Tim, if I can call you on up. Tim has, as some of you may know, has spent 25 years working for the Niagara Regional Police Service. Tim began his career with the Ministry of Correctional Services, and for 11 years spent his time, I hesitate to say it this way, in jail. but spent his time for 11 years, his initial 11 years in law enforcement with the Ministry of Correctional Services, and following that spent 25 years with the Niagara Regional Police. As you will hear, he steadily proved himself to be a great asset to the police service for those 25 years. Tim started in 1988 as a uniformed patrol constable in the city of St. Catharines, as well as the city of Welland. 6 years later, he was promoted to the rank of detective constable, working with the Welland Division in various units. In 1996, Tim was again promoted to the rank of detective sergeant, working between St. Catharines Street Crime and the Welland Street Crime Unit. In 2001, Tim was promoted to sergeant in the recruiting unit. In 2004, he became uniformed patrol sergeant, working in Welland and here in the city of Port Colborne. In 2009, Tim was promoted to staff sergeant and was subsequently transferred to Port Colborne as district commander in 2012 until his retirement on May 31st. And I have to get off notes here, because and I was fortunate to be invited over to Tim's retirement gathering on Friday. And I have to say, of all the retirement gatherings I've been to, and I've been to a lot of them, I've never seen the amount of people in one room for one individual, based on a career that has been outstanding. When I walked in, I was, quite frankly, don't take any offense to this, Tim, because it wasn't you personally, it was just based on experience. I was expecting to see maybe 50 people, 60 people, and I walked in there and I think there was over 200 people there, if not over 300, 400 people there. It was packed, which is a testament to what Tim has given both to the service as well as being a friend to many, many people throughout the region of Niagara and even beyond. And when I was asked, I had the pleasure of being asked to speak, the privilege to being asked to speak by the MC, Des Carter, who was also a district commander here in Port Colborne. And when you look out to in the policing family and you see all those folks there speaking about not only their jobs, but just basically their relationships, which is more important, you recognize how much of an impact each of them, as well as Tim, make as a policing family. And with that, it goes beyond the world of policing. It gets into the community. And Tim has been, again, a testament to that, whereby he's not only been an officer in protecting us as citizens of Niagara, but as well, he volunteers as a coach for minor hockey. He volunteers with Special Olympians. He's a family man with a son and a daughter. Yes. And actually his son is just starting in the service himself. But how important it is, and how important to Tim it was and continues to be involved in the community just as much as being involved in his job as a Niagara Regional Police Constable, and ending his career here in Port Colborne as the commander here in 2012. So it's the least that we can do, and I know it has been tradition here to recognize those folks that have worked in Port Colborne or that are from Port Colborne with the service, but Tim is one that it gives me great pleasure to do so, because of both the friendship and the working relationship, at least I, and I'm sure many others, have had in Tim's years with the service, in particular here in the city of Port Colborne. So Tim, I have to, and I feel so cheap, because as I say to everyone that I get up here, you know, I'd love to send you to Hawaii, you and Patty to Hawaii, but they won't let me do that. So I'm blaming them. But it's the very least we can do to offer to Tim and present to Staff Sergeant Tim Olichka in recognition of 25 years of dedicated and outstanding service of the Niagara Regional Police Service, and on behalf of City Council, colleagues, but most importantly, folks, on behalf of all the citizens of the city of Port Colborne. We thank you. The contributions your efforts have provided to the Niagara Regional Police Service will be, and the Niagara region in particular, will be everlasting. Tim, thank you.
Very much.
Now, before I move on, and I'm going to allow Tim to speak, so I'll let you get your thoughts together. So it's minimum 10-minute speech, so you're good to go. I also want to take this opportunity because, as we know, and not only when we watch the news, but we can all just imagine when a police officer out there every day and every night. Also, there needs to be an opportunity to thank his family, and to ensure that his family, in particular his wife Patty, who's here this evening, recognizes how much we appreciate and not only thank Tim for his service, but also thank you and your family, your son and your daughter, for allowing us the services that Tim has been able to afford us for the past 25 years here in both Port Colborne as well as throughout the Niagara region. So I'd like to call you on up here as well. By the way, you get time on the microphone too.
I can please for the Hawaii trip.
But here's some flowers here for you, and once again, thank you.
Very kind. Thank you very much.
So with that, I am going to ask Tim, with his fine one, better half, his wife, to stand next to him and say a few words to the residents and members of City Council.
Thank you. Well, I'll start by saying this is totally unexpected, but so greatly appreciated. I'm humbled by the recognition for doing something I love so much, and that is being a police officer, and just to become involved in the community. Coming back as a district commander was my second time in Port. I was here 3 years as a uniformed sergeant before I was promoted to staff, and I just thoroughly loved my time here in Port Colborne. It's a great community. The people were so kind to me and worked with me so well, not only members of council when I was here as a road sergeant as well as staff, but the emergency services. We had such a relationship. It was phenomenal, the way we could work together on problems and how we would bounce ideas off each other and things like that, and got a lot of problems solved. And I also want to say too that when I want to take my hat off to the community itself, because there were times when I would get calls from people with problems, and I got a fair bit of them, whether they came through City Hall or whether they came to my office directly. And my hat goes off to the people, because they take pride in their community and they were willing to work with me. What came in maybe initially as a complaint ended up being a partnership where we would say, let's work together, where I would then ask the people, what is it? What do you see us? Put yourself in my shoes. What would you do? And we would eventually come to some sort of solution to the problem. So that's what made working here in Port Colborne so easy, was the cooperation of City Council and the Mayor's office and the Mayor himself, and the emergency services and the partnerships we had, as well as the people of Port Colborne. I thoroughly enjoyed working on Canal Days, the years I was here working on them. It's a great party and a great event, and it takes a lot of work, and I know the work that goes into it. So I will now take another look as a civilian at having the respect for the people that put a lot of work in there, because I know a lot of effort goes into it, and the results are shown. But once again, I want to thank everybody for being so kind and cooperative to me and with me, and I will never forget my time in Port Colborne. It was my very first district command, my only district command, and my best district command. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I had two wishes when I was a police officer. One of them was to retire out of Port Colborne, if you can believe it, years ago when I was not even thinking of retiring. The other one was never to go to Niagara Falls, but because and that didn't happen though. But I'll speak honestly about it, but I always wanted to retire out of Port Colborne, and it happened, and I want to thank you all for your help. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you again, Mayor. Really appreciate it.
Thank you
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you so much.
Chief?
Yeah, Tim, I just want to say that your continued efforts, or your efforts that you put into your office, certainly made our job that much easier when we ran into a few bumps in the road over a period of a few months that you were here. Unfortunately, you didn't last that long. Maybe good for you, bad for us, I guess, but congratulations on your retirement from all of our people in the department. I know Mike has known you for a number of years, so Mike, if you just want to say a couple words, feel free. If not, I understand. But nonetheless, Tim, and to your wife too, good luck putting up with them on a regular basis now. But I'm sure that you've got a list for them to do, so congratulations.
Thanks, Chief. And Mike, don't forget what I told you before the meeting, eh? Mike has his boat in Port Colborne here at the marina. So I told him, don't feel free to come to my office any day you want. Just pull me out of the office with a fishing pole, and I'm out of here. But enjoy your retirement, Tim and Patty. Thank you for allowing us, Tim, for all these years, and enjoy. It's well earned. You deserve it. We have no delegations this evening. Yet. I just have a short report that I'm going to go through. First off, I'm going to start off with a question to Mr. Aquilina. I understand, Dan, that from correspondence that I've received through email from Rob Waters of Waters Environmental. Rob Waters, for information for those watching on COGECO as well as members of council, is the city's peer reviewer throughout the past 12-year community-based risk assessment process, and that there seems to be some discrepancy with respect to payment of invoices by Valley. So I've been hearing this through email for the past few weeks, if not few months, quite frankly, and just wanted to get your take on this, Dan, in terms of what's happening between Rob Waters and Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be careful with my words here. But unfortunately, we're at this position we are at today. I guess it's important to start off back in 2000 when the city, the Ministry of Environment, and INCO, now Valley, agreed to a terms of reference for the PLC, the Public Liaison Committee. And in Section 8 of that terms of reference was an actual statement that the work performed by the independent consultant for the PLC is to be paid for by INCO, now Valley.
That would be the Public Liaison Committee?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. That has been carried forward for 13 years, or 10 years, I should say, up until about 2010. Now we're in a position where there is $137,000 owing, and Valley's position is they're only willing to pay $24,000 of that. They feel that Waters environmental work should not have taken place because the PLC's fulfillment was done in 2010. Unfortunately, that really is not the case because the PLC, their final report was based on draft documents and nothing final. So Waters Environmental put together the QA/QC reports for crops, HHRA, and the ERA. The TSC chairman notes, and the chain of custody information. So, Mr. Mayor, that is where we're at today. Valley's position is they're not willing to pay that, and that is what you've been receiving in the emails.
So, in terms of next steps, Mr. Aquilina, what expectation well, I guess the PLC is all wrapped up now, to some extent, and Mr. Waters obviously wants to be paid, and Valley has dug their heels in. So what are the next steps? What are we looking at doing?
Mr. Mayor, I think it would be prudent to inform Valley that what the actual terms of reference was for the PLC, and in fact the work, and essentially the MOE requires this work to be done in final form in order for the process to continue onward. I would think to inform Valley that, listen, this is what the PLC's terms of reference said, and by right, you should continue onward in paying Waters Environmental. Whether that comes through me, Mr. Mayor, or from the City Council as a whole, that is Council's prerogative.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Members of Council, are there any questions? Councilor Demeray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dan. Dan, considering the PLC's final report was actually made on draft documents, that doesn't leave us with a completed process by any means. I would think that this council should request that the Waters Environmental bill be paid by Valley, but also that we ask the MOE to join in on that request.
Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, that's absolutely, I can do that.
Okay, so if you want to make that a motion, Councilor?
I do, sir.
Okay. Madam Clerk? And the clerk's office has that? That's fine. You got the gist of that? Do we have a seconder to that? Councillor Doucette? Any questions or comments to that? Members? Any further comment, Mr. Aquilina?
Mr. Mayor, I look forward to actually concluding the work for Waters Environmental. So the next phase being that the MOE needs to report back to the community on next steps. So it's important that we actually get this ball rolling.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Aquilina, and thank you, councillors. With no further questions, I'll ask your pleasure to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. And Mr. Aquilina, thank you. Appreciate it. Finally, members of council, great news. As of today, the WFN, the World Fishing Network, if some of you haven't heard, who are, as you know, the leading entertainment destination and digital resource for anglers throughout North America, today announced that anglers across the United States and anglers across Canada have selected Port Colborne, Ontario, Canada, and Point Breeze on Lake Ontario, New York, as WFN's ultimate fishing towns for 2013. What an appropriate segue into, or entering into Tourism Week, as this week is Tourism Week, and being the Monday start of Tourism Week, a great segue into the week as Niagara being the top destination for tourism in all of Canada, if not North America. The World Fishing Network's designation of the city of Port Colborne as Canada's ultimate fishing town, as you can recognize and agree, validates Niagara's south coast as a fishing hotspot. A great deal of credit for this designation belongs to Kieran Whitmire and Colleen Vallen-Krelligen, two individuals that were here before council a few months ago to kick off the initiative. And I have to give credit to their team as well for championing this overall initiative. Their efforts, members of council, have in fact exposed to the world another reason to come and enjoy all that we have to offer here within Niagara. The residual benefit, besides what we have been designated, is how we were able to be designated. Members of council, the overall team effort from those both within our community as well as the many, and I mean many, from outside of our community, and the overall appreciation from the anglers from across the nation is something to be extremely proud of. Once again, the city of Port Colborne has stepped up to the plate to contribute another reason to come to Niagara, Canada's premier destination, in particular Niagara's south coast, to experience vibrant, active, and fun activities for the entire family. So well done to all those folks that were involved. It was 3 years in the making, to say the very least, and now the city of Port Colborne is Canada's ultimate fishing town. So to all those that were involved, great work, great work. To Kieran and Colleen, once again, and their team, just a wonderful job. I know they were at it day and night. And all the folks that participated, all of you that participated, I want to express my appreciation to. So with that, members, are there any questions or comments? Pardon me? When do we that's you, Barb. When do we get the money? We are meeting tomorrow with WFN and all the people, the folks involved. They are going to be coming down here to make the announcement publicly in an event fashion, as well as they're going to kick off their filming. They're going to do a filming that will be highlighted on the WFN network, as well as we're going to make a presentation of the $25,000 to the appropriate benefactors. So, which will be the Conservation Club. So look forward to that. They should be down here the week of the Canada Day weekend. They're going to be down here, and we're going to try and get it as close to Flavors as possible, so we can combine both events. But it's quite exciting, quite exciting. We're on a conference call with them today, and everybody's just raring to go. So it's great news for the city, great news for the region. With no further comments, we'll now move on to the Regional Council's report. Councillor Derrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Congratulations to the city for that designation as well this year. I had the opportunity to join a Niagara contingent to Vancouver earlier this month for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Those on council here are familiar with that. However, FCM's 2013 annual conference and trade show is Canada's leading conference for municipal decision makers. Participating in FCM's annual conference is a chance for municipal leaders to learn from experts and their peers. Delegates learn the best way to manage the expensive and complex services our communities need. Attending the conference is the best way for municipal leaders to learn about new funding announcements for this year, the federal budget, which included over $50 billion worth of funding for better local roads, bridges, water systems, and housing. Now, I personally haven't attended an FCM conference in the past. I usually go to AMO, the Ontario Association. Why I went to FCM this year is because Niagara, and Niagara Falls in particular, will be hosting FCM in 2014. The benefit for Niagara is a $5 to $6 million injection to the local economy. So there was a significant Niagara contingent that went to Vancouver this year, primarily to bolster Niagara, to get great attendance for next year, in the new convention center in particular. Mr. Mayor, when we got on this term of council, one of the items that we had asked for was to get a debt strategy in place at the region. And we had a presentation on our debt at the region and putting in a strategy in place as well. So I'm just going to highlight some of the things from that front. As many of you know as well, the province of Ontario establishes the formula for calculating the annual repayment limit for all municipalities. The annual repayment limit a municipality can have is 25%. Niagara's, for the year ending 2012, was 8.2%. What does that transform into actual dollars? For 2012, Niagara's debt at year end, December 31st, stood at $464 million. However, $217 million of that is recoverable from local area municipalities, including Port Colborne, Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, etc. When you add in as well the total authorized debt, which has been uninitiated or hasn't been spent yet, the end of 2013 would anticipate an extra $150 million on top of that. So it's important for the region, especially going into budget, to have a good handle on what our limits are, where we stand, because that number does move. Another agency that looks at data, Standard & Poor's, the S&P, they have several criteria and factors when considering their rating. Niagara right now is a AA, which puts us in about the middle of the pack compared to other municipalities of comparable size. They look at the economy locally, financial management, budgetary flexibility, liquidity, debt burden, contingent liabilities, etc. The reason why Standard & Poor's rating is so important because it affects our interest rates. A better interest rate means better, a better S&P rating means better interest rates, and we can save money. The next steps, Mr. Mayor, is to outline methods the region will use to manage our debt and the debt of our boards and agencies. We also have asked for, on the flip side, a review of our reserves as well. Make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck on the reserve side. So I'm happy to keep council informed as well as we go through that process on the reserves. Now that leads into our meeting that we had last Thursday, which we set budget guidance for 2014. I know it's early in the year, but typically regional staff spend the summer months working on the budget with the guidance that we set earlier in the year. For us, we adopted a policy recently that we would have an affordability policy, which means we follow the Bank of Canada's core consumer price index, which is currently 2%, plus assessment growth, which is 0.7%. So our budget guidance for 2014 is 2.7%. With that said, Mr. Mayor, as you know as well, there's recently been an arbitration award for the police. We don't know what the exact numbers of that are yet, but I'm sure you will know being on the Police Services Board soon. Included in that budget guidance is inclusive of any arbitration award that the police will be given as well. So that's my presentation for this evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Barrick. Members of council, any questions or comments? Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Barrick. Councillor Barrick, not in regards to your presentation tonight, but before us tonight is coming a report from the region in regards to the Niagara Region Water and Wastewater Service Delivery Review. And I wonder if you could offer any comments for us in regards to that. Just how you feel as regional councillor Is that a benefit to the city of Port Colborne, in your opinion, or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks for the question as well. So, one, I'm not on that committee, so I haven't had an opportunity to really sink my teeth into that particular report. I'm aware of its findings, and I understand the process right now is that it is in fact being passed around to local municipalities for feedback before the region gets it. There's got to be buy-in. We can't, we're partners. The region is the wholesaler. The local municipalities are the retailers. We need to be on the same page as much as possible moving forward. It's definitely worth exploring. I mean, the region paid over $600,000 for the study. So regardless of the outcome, there's a lot of beneficial information and data in there to make us more efficient, regardless of how we move forward now. So I look forward to hearing the comments from yourselves and the other councils within the region. So there needs to be some cooperation there. Personally, I think it's important that we do have these discussions not only for water, wastewater, but for planning and other areas as well. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Dave. It's good to see. I know I read in the paper that you promoted the police services increase to be incorporated into that 2% budget guidance. So I'm glad that was taken. I was going to ask the same question that Councillor Kenny asked. Your thoughts and comments on the water wastewater. I know that's another study undertaken by the region to see amalgamating services into basically single tier delivery of services. I know that the mayor promoted looking at transit as an amalgamated transit and a single tier service. You did mention that there's other things that the region may be looking at from a planning perspective. Don't want to give Dana any heart attacks or anything like that. And I don't want to give the chief or fire prevention officer a heart attack either. Has there been any conversation around looking at a regional fire department? We've got regional policing. We've got a regional EMS. I'm just wondering if there's been any conversation around taking the fire department under the region.
Thank you, Councillor. Chief? Don't be shy.
I don't know if you want me to comment on this. I've been a proponent of it since 1990. I think it's something we should seriously look at. That's the short and sweet of it as far as I'm concerned.
I think Regional Councillor Barrick makes a good point when stating, at the end of the day, although people do have their perceptions about regional and municipal governments and one being responsible for services versus the other, but I think at the end of the day, it's all about the taxpayer and what's beneficial to the taxpayer. And your comment earlier is valid, David, with respect to having the ability to look at all these services and really rationalize and audit, as we are here locally as well as regionally, the different businesses or services that we're into and where best it would be delivered. When you look at water, wastewater, for example, my recommendation, by the way, to members of council, just to preface the reports later on, would be to defer that report until we get more information, because quite frankly, there's not enough information there, and I think most municipalities share that thought. Is that just as late as late last week, are we still receiving information from the Director of Water Wastewater Services? So it's not fair for municipalities to, quite frankly, go into tomorrow's committee week at the region. And are you on Public Works, Dave? On Public Works, where I'll be at, and expect to make a decision on something when the municipalities simply don't have enough information on to comment on. So my intent tomorrow will be to ask Public Works to actually defer that report to a later date, so that therefore municipalities can dig a bit deeper into this process. It's just too darn important to try and rush it through. And that's with water, wastewater. Now, on the flip side, when you look at transit, for example, we've been through that for the last 2 years. And it's time to get off the pot, so to speak, in terms of moving that forward. And I think you've read in the paper my thoughts on that with respect to transit services. I think we've been down that road, no pun intended, and it's obvious what needs to be, especially when it comes to the economies of scale with respect to providing transit services all across the region. Dave mentioned the NRP, the Niagara Regional Police. I do want to touch on that for a second, because we are going to be going into a caucus meeting this Thursday with respect to the arbitration award. Dave is correct. There is an arbitration award, just over 3%. And of course, with 2012, That is expected to be contained within the 2.7 guidance for 2013 at the region. But you got to remember, this is a 2012 impact, so it's retroactive. Now we're getting into the 2013 negotiation. That was only a one-year contract. Now we're getting into 13. So that's also going to have to be factored into that 2.7, which is going to make it very tight. And I'll say with all due honesty, it's very difficult for the board as well as the regional council to really balance out the services that are traditional here in the region, and then paying for those services that are traditional within the region. And I can say without any hesitation that at least myself as one member of the board, we'll be actually looking at layoffs this year, which is tough because of the services that we're trying to provide as it relates to all different intricacies of policing throughout the Niagara region. So it's going to be very difficult to meet that over 3% arbitration award for 2012 and then negotiate and fit into the budget, especially the 2.7% guidance, 2013 negotiations. Very difficult without looking at some human resource changes, because as members of council recognize, over 95, well, I'd say over about 93% of the police budget is human resource related. It's all wages. So it's a challenge. But between the region and the different boards and agencies, we share that challenge, and I'm sure we'll meet it. Yeah. Members of council, any further questions or comments? Well done. David, thank you. Well done. Members of council, your turn. New business, items, updates. Councillor Danch.
I guess me before you, right? Perfect.
I got you.
Had a little short talk with Ron there, and just wanted to compliment the flowers that are hanging on Main Street. My wife was kind of giving me a heck there, wondering where our flowers were when I was sitting downtown. We're looking out the window at San Marcos, and sure enough, they were there the next day, and they're looking pretty good, and it was kind of neat watching the guys watering them in the rain today. So, but they tell me that that's fertilized water, right, Mr. Heil? There you go. Went through a couple of issues there on Main Street. We're trying to get our street up and going and that, and we definitely have a few faults there on our street. Talk with Ron, and he's going to look after some of the issues with some missing hanger brackets and some broken down trees and stuff like that. So for those people that were calling me up and giving me the gears, Ron and I have spoke, and we'll have that looked after. Apparently we have a meeting this Friday with the guys, and I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Danch. Further new business question? Councillor Butters and Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that, we don't have a room full of golf cart stuff, but I got a thing about golf carts today, oddly enough. There have been golf carts on the Friendship Trail, and I was asked to bring that forward to council. Obviously, golf carts should not be on the Friendship Trail. They should not be on the road to get to the Friendship Trail. I don't know where they're coming from, but they were spotted they were east of Pleasant Beach Road, coming from the west and heading east. So whether they came out of Shirkston Shores or elsewhere, I don't know, but in some of the instances, there were some very young voices heard, so the people that heard them and saw them thought maybe it was, younger individuals on it as opposed to adults. Doesn't really matter, they shouldn't be there anyway. So I'm hoping that we could, this was happening mostly Saturday, Sunday on the weekend, the last few weekends, not on the bad weather ones, but the nice weather ones. So if we could maybe get some police presence maybe down around Empire Road area where they could access the trail. I'm even surprised that, they're getting around the stones and stuff to get on there, but they're getting on there somehow. So, okay. But it's a concern for safety and people that are walking on the trail. It's a big concern, and whatever damage they can cause and whatever harm they could do themselves on the road too. So,
thank you, Councillor Butters, and I'll give that my immediate attention with the NRP tomorrow morning. Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Peter. Dave brought up debt strategy for the region. Is there any way you can create a report for us to let us know where our debt is? What we've got to look forward to, maybe going into 14, and the years after, just to show where we are, what we can expect over the next few years. I don't know how many departments budget for 5 to 10 year outreach to show what needs to be done. But just to kind of give us an overview of where we stand, what percentage we're at. I know that you're capped at, I believe, we're capped at 20%.
Provincial is 25.
We have a policy.
Our policy is
20.
15.
Oh, 15. Okay.
Is it 20 now?
20. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Okay. And just to show us where we are, what's coming off the books, what's going on the books, and what we can expect over the next few years, just to give us a heads up going into budget later on.
Do we not get that during budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, we weren't debenturing any major projects this year, and it was a report that I'm putting together actually as you're speaking, putting together what are the larger projects that we do have on the books for 2014 and forward, and was going to be bringing that over the next month or so to council to give them a whole overview of it prior to us going into any budget meetings for 2014.
Okay, thank you, Peter. It's fine. Good. I have Councillor Bodnar, then Councillor Demeray, then Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to comment on Councillor Butter's golf cart thing. There's, just because I drive in that area quite a bit, there's lots of people that own their own golf carts, say on Shirkson Road too. So it could be coming from a lot of different areas, so thanks. Yeah. Question through to, I guess, Mr. Hansen. Have we continued the brushing of the trail at the crossings where it crosses the roads? I know last year I had brought it up and went out with staff, and they had taken care of it very well, but as you know, things grow back quite quickly. I just wondered whether this is an ongoing thing, or are you going to wait for me to bring it forward again this year?
Mr. Hansen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. Yes, that's an ongoing maintenance issue. I'll raise it again with our roads people and ensure that the sight lines are clear at all the trail openings.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Hansen.
One more for Mr. Hansen too. I just wondered, I had brought forward to staff the possibility of trying some patching on Empire Road, the remaining rumble strips. I guess there's one other road. If anybody drives that road, they certainly appear to be getting constantly worse year after year. And I know we're looking at not doing anything until we redo that road, but in all honesty, that road's been done, and hopefully it's going to last for a lot of years, so it could be 10 years before we get around to that. Those strips will continue to get worse, and I just wondered whether there is, I would like to see us try a patching material, not all of them, just as a sample area. I know before Cedar Bay Road was done, before the rumble strips were done, somebody, could have been, not necessarily the works department, but somebody that drove over them a lot, put some patching, it looked like a tar material in there. That stayed in there for years, and it softened those rumble strips, and they just put it in where the car tires may go. So can we look at that? And can staff research the possibility of something going in there to at least try a few of them to see whether it'll hold at all?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hansen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, when Councillor Bodnar raised that issue a while back in one of the previous meetings, I asked the roads foreman to investigate any materials, asphaltic materials, that could be poured into those strips to try to soften them. And we are looking at that, so hopefully we can get a resolve and get back to you right away on what the answer is.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Councillor?
I just wondered, and I was away for one meeting, so if it was dealt with, I'm sorry, but I didn't hear if staff came back with any report on the medical marijuana situation that is, being proposed in some greenhouses, and I just wondered if it hadn't been brought forward, when will it be?
Mr. Aquilino?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bodnar, our chief billing official is actually doing all the background research and a report will be forthcoming, I would say probably within the next month or so.
Okay.
One other one, Mr.
Go ahead.
Mayor? I don't think there isn't a limit on
No.
items, is there?
Take your time.
I know that that there's been quite a bit of work going on at Roselawn on bringing the possibility of bringing like jazz and different events forward. Friends of Roselawn been working on it. I understand, Councillor Butters, you were at the last meeting, and Councillor Demery was. Okay. So, anyways, I hope you could feel the enthusiasm of what is really progressing, and it looks like it's going to come to fruition here very soon. So in that same vein, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO, we had talked about bringing forward a possible new rental structure for Roselawn. I just wondered, and I know staff is got a lot on their plate, but I wondered if that could be brought forward sooner rather than later, because I think some of the opportunities may involve a little bit of partnership. I don't know that for sure, but I would hate to see it lost just because we missed the opportunity of bringing this forward and discussing it. So I just wondered what the time frame might be on that.
Mr. Hakeem?
Through your worship, to Councillor Bodner. Actually, we're investigating comparative prices at other communities in terms of the current rent structure that we have at Roselawn. And we're putting together sort of an analysis as to what other communities like size in terms of theater size, amenities, and other services that they provide, just to give you a breakdown. So we'll bring that forward hopefully sooner than later. I can't really pin it down to a date. All that data I just received. I'm just starting to open it up and analyze it. So it's going to take a little bit of time to kind of put together, but certainly sooner than later, and I won't pin it down to a date at this point in time, but it's certainly something that we had just started working on because of the momentum and some of the dialogue we've had with Friends of Roselawn. And so we'll bring it back to council as soon as we can.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hakeem. Thank you, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two items, both for Ron Hansen. Ron, number one, I've been asked to see that we put a request in to cut the grass along the drainage pond along Ritter Road. Apparently we don't do that on a yearly basis. That's only done once in a while, but there are some people with some extreme allergies along there that need it cut. So that's one. The other one, and I put this request in several times already, but Valley is not keeping up with their grass cutting. The baseball field along Rodney Street is quite high. I've actually got a couple pictures of it on my phone. It's quite high, and it needs to be cut. And the north end of the parking lot along Davis Street is, well, it's a beautiful field full of wildflowers. That's how high it is. So it needs to be cut as well. When you've got 3-foot high daisies, time to cut it. Those need to be done. Normally that has been kept up, but the last 2 or 3 years that hasn't been happening. So if you could see to that, that would be great.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hanson, didn't we start cutting the baseball field at Valley? Because I brought that to Sherry's attention, I think last week, and she had mentioned to me that they're already starting to do that work.
Mr. Mayor, we used to cut it. We used it as a ball field at one time, as one of our facilities, but that's lapsed. And I understand from some of the emails I've seen last week that the responsibility is back with Valley. It's no longer being used by the city, and there's a request made now that going to Valley through the grass cutting bylaw that they will be asked to cut that area.
Yeah,
it's owned entirely by them.
I was under the impression they had already started, or someone had already started cutting it. Not yet?
It was removed from our list.
Okay, good. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, again to Ron. Ron, when you meet with the contractor responsible for the planter boxes on Main Street, could you ask them just to maybe add a little color? I know it's called decorative grass, but I talked to my fellow councillors here tonight. I don't like the way it looks. I don't think it looks like decorative grass. And I know you said it's something, it's a budget item that would have to be looked at, but I just think it needs something other than whatever all that is on those planter boxes. And I know that we've been asking for some soil in one of the planter boxes, and you said that's a maintenance issue. So just ask him to add that maintenance issue to a request to have soil put in. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Hanson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kenny and I spoke briefly just before the meeting. I think it's important to keep in mind a couple of things. The planter boxes are just planters. They're not flower boxes. They were put on the street to green the street. So those are perennial grasses and plants that grow on an annual basis, and they're basically green. There's not a lot of color to them. That contract expires July 31st this year. So if it's council's wishes to change the nature, the flavor of those boxes, those planters, we're going to have to talk about that at budget time and find a way to put perhaps some perennial flowers in there that'll come up on an annual basis. Right now, the way it was designed, the way it was built, the intent wasn't to have it really colorful. It was to green the street and make it more pleasant along there. So planting of flowers will be something we can look at budget time probably for 2014. That contract does expire at the end of July, and then it'll be the city's responsibility to do any work in there beyond that.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Further new business? Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The talk of grass cutting just reminded me of something I wanted to ask. Did we get a new grass cutter in the rural areas this year? Just remind me.
Mr. Hanson?
Can't remember. Is it just an extended contract?
It is a new contractor, but the work's ongoing as in the past.
All right. Can I just ask then that maybe the drainage superintendent or one of staff just take a drive out? I just noticed they just did Cedar Bay Road today, and I know it's been extremely wet, and but they drove right through the ditch and rutted up the ditch quite a bit. I think the last contractor had an arm where he could go over top. This one appears to be behind the tractor, and so they drove a number of times through the ditch, and it's quite rutted. I don't know that it affects the ditch, but it just looks like it could. So I just wonder if you could check it out and just see if it is a problem, then maybe he could adjust his cutting.
Great. Thank you, Councillor.
We'll have that checked out too.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Further new business? Councillor's items. Members of staff, any updates? Mr. Hakeem?
Through your worship to council and staff, just to bring you up to date on a couple of matters concerning activities and events going on, and actually it's a great segue with the fishing network and designation that the city has received. But just to bring up to date, the 444 tournament, which has been hosted here for a number of years, is not being held this year. But in terms of going forward, the Budweiser Can-Am is an event that Erie Tracker has come forward to sponsor with the help of Budweiser as a title sponsor for the same weekend. And there are issues behind the 444, but what they're doing is planning to host the 60th anniversary next year. So they're still going to have it. This is just a stopgap for this year. And in fact, the registration, from what I'm told, and Mark can kind of elaborate on more detail down at the marina activities, but it is sold out as far as registration. They've reached their maximum capacity at this point in time. But that's happening on the same weekend, the 22nd, 23rd weekend. It'll be the Budweiser Can-Am Walleye Challenge, happening on Saturday the 22nd, 23rd. But it's a very similar format, perhaps not as many participating, but it's certainly going to be an exciting time with the registration capacity. There will be some campers that will be facilitated, but not at H.H. Knoll, in the parking lot area behind the overflow area by the marina parking area where Don Cherry's is. And I think that everything is pretty much worked out as far as marina staff and being able to facilitate this event without any real need to tax any more resources than what we have already in place. So it should be a good weekend in that regard. Anything else you want to add, Mark? Or no? And the second thing was basically moving forward with the Culture Committee. We met recently, the CIO, myself, Peter, and the clerk, municipal clerk, Ashley, and we discussed some aspects of the terms of reference, preparing something in the form of a draft, and looking at other best practice models that exist out in the municipality. And we have some tools at our disposal that I've recently shared with Ashley, so she'll be doing a little bit of research to help us out, and hopefully being in a position to bring something back to council in the form of a draft latter part of this year, certainly the fall period, rather than sooner than we can, because there's still quite a bit of work involved in putting some terms of reference together, investigating best practices. And the other thing that I recently discovered was a 1992 Culture Parks Rec Master Plan. So we'll be pulling that together and getting some information from there that we'll be able to share with members of council as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hakeem. With no further comments or questions, updates, we'll move on to the next item. The adoption of the minutes of the 14th meeting regular of Committee of the Whole, May 27, 2013. Members of council, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Desmarais, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. We'll now move on to the consideration of the bylaws. Just an FYI for some of the folks in the gallery, any of that item that you're here for, passed. It's done. So I just wasn't sure if you were sitting here waiting for it or just enjoying the council meeting. You missed it, eh? I was going to ask you a couple drainage questions, but I thought, just for old time's sake. Thanks, Rennie. Members of council, we're going to start off with item 2. Councillor Elliott.
Mayor, I'll ask for leave of council if we'd rather jump to 5, seeing how everybody else in the gallery is here for item 5.
That's fine.
Just because item 2 may take, we may have a lively discussion on smoking. And if we just bump up 5, then everybody can go home after that.
That's fine. Is council good with that? Okay, item 5, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Department of Community and Corporate Services, Community Service Division Report number 2013-22, subject RFP, Full Service Marine Supply and Service Shop, that council rejects Marlon Marine Inc. request for proposal for the provision of full service marine supply and service shop. The council hereby directs staff to negotiate the services currently offered by Colborne Marine in whole or in part as required up to the end of the current season as needed to implement Model 1. The council further directs staff to continue to implement Model 1, including but not limited to mechanical and service passport program and negotiation with all marine service providers, including method to provide contract services if and as required for the launch and haul-out services with the option of providing winter maintenance and shrink wrapping, all to ensure full service marine service delivery.
Thank you, Councillor. Have a second to that recommendation, please. Councillor Danch. Questions or comments? Councillor Elliott, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I get just a few questions. I guess when I read the report, some things popped up. I don't boat, I don't do the marina, but there's things that popped up that just kind of made me question. Port Colborne Marine didn't put in an RFP for the full service. I know that they are the provider right now, but it says that there was one RFP tendered, and that was from Marlon Marine. And the staff proposal is to throw Marlon out and negotiate with Port Colborne Marine. And I'm wondering, why are we negotiating with somebody that didn't even put an RFP in? I know that there's part of the contract that we can continue their services on, negotiate for an extra year. But I'm thinking if I wanted to do the extra year, I'm going to put an RFP in anyways because I know that somebody else did. And if I want to continue my business, I'm not going to let somebody come and underbid me. I'm going to show that I want the business. And they didn't put in an RFP, so why are we negotiating with somebody that didn't show the initiative to come forward and say, I want to continue on with this business?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Howell?
Your Worship, currently in our discussion, in our view as staff, and to implement what we had talked about initially in Model 1, and it's full service operated by the city. what we wanted to try to do was see if there was, in the initial RFP, we sought, based on the RFP, all kinds of opportunities for service. After we reviewed the RFP, we found it wasn't meeting anywhere near what we need to do. So the implementation of Model 1, as originally discussed and directed and provided by Council, we're proceeding on that basis. We need to buy a little time, and Mr. Hakeem can speak to it at this point in time. We're not intending to do a year. We're going to do this ourselves, as had laid out in the RFP. And the financial spreadsheet shows here is that instead of making $20,000 a year, we can make 40. We know that we can make that kind of money, going to double the income, and that's what we're doing for business, and that's what was presented to Council, was an attempt and a way to try to find ways to turn this into something that paid for itself instead of paying out of pocket.
Thank you. Mr. Hakeem?
Through your worship, in the request for proposal, we felt that when we reviewed the proponent's information, that it really didn't fit the model that we were motivated to follow, the direction that Council provided us. Secondly, we felt that we needed more time, obviously as the CAO has alluded to investigate all possibilities that would stay as close to Model 1 as possible. And excuse me, a number of those options we've highlighted in the report. There are aspects of the proponent's proposal that really put us in a position where we couldn't guarantee certain things, and we obviously identified those. And we also wanted to actually respect the current arrangement that we have with Colborne Marine, since that lease, and forgive me, I just have to consult Mark, that ends at the end of this month. And in order to maintain the services that the boaters and the mariners have become accustomed to, as far as launch and haul-out services, we felt it was prudent for us to at least secure them for the balance of a term. Certainly not for any extended term, but try and swing it back into the Model 1 arrangement that we currently have in place that we would like to follow.
Thank you. Mark, anything to offer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think, yeah, just what Harry said, just need a little bit more time to investigate all options, and that's basically it.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. In the report, it's critical of an ask from Marlon for a $4,500 expense to install a separate electrical meter. Can you explain to me what that is? Because I have no idea. Where do they want a separate electrical meter, and how are we going about charging for electrical right now?
Mr. Sinez.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, right now the Marine Service building is powered on through one meter, and what we did 2 years ago was the Marine Service building also powered docks 1 and 2, and what was provided was we put a meter on docks 1 and 2 in order to determine how much usage was being used by the boaters in docks 1 and 2. What it doesn't or wasn't able to meter was the East Main Run and docks 3 to 6, I believe it is, which is just behind our marina building itself, the main building. And so there is there's also an estimated amount of hydro usage in there. So there's always been a little bit of determining how much usage we have docks 1 and 2 compared to the balance, and we were able to come up with a formula for that. So the request here is to actually try to put in a specific meter that will only read the marina building itself, and provide that, and that's a cost of about $4,500. We estimated about a year and a half ago.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor.
Thank you. So last year, when Port Colborne Marine was there, how much did we charge them for electricity? Do we base it on what we're doing at the Valet Center right now, where we're charging on a per square foot basis? Did we charge them on a per square foot basis, or what was the overall bill that we sent them?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Same formula is being used for Port Colborne Marine, our current service provider. The agreement, as was with Marlin, the same formula was being implemented, which is basically what the exact hydro readings are. And we have a meter reading for docks 1 and 2, and we have a formula for estimating the readings for docks 3 to 6 in the East Main Run. That is deducted off the bill and charged back to the provider.
Councillor?
You have a dollar figure estimate?
Mr. Smith?
Not off the top.
Okay. To me, we seem like we're losing business down there, and I don't know why. Like I say, I don't boat. I don't visit it that often. But I have talked to a couple of clients of mine that are members down there. They're not happy with the way that things are going. As far as the revenues off of the storage and the lift in, lift out, are we down in revenue from that over previous years? Do you see more boats not being in? When I see the revenue off the lift in, lift out at just shy of $2,000, that tells me we were charging them a capital cost of $25 per lift in, lift out. We did 80 lifts, whether that be in or out. Either way, it doesn't matter. It comes out to 80 of them. Is that down? Are we getting less usage of the marina? For whatever reason, I hear from people that they'd rather have Marlon come back for the simple fact that they know them, they trust them with their boats, they know how to put them in and out. When it was them storing the boats for winter storage, it seemed like it was full. There was over 100 boats there. For some reason, and if I'm missing something, somebody tell me. For some reason, it was busier when they were doing it than what happened last year when Port Colborne Marine took over. I heard complaints from numerous people that the service shop wasn't even open half the time. They didn't have parts. They were telling people to go down to their shop on King Street to go get parts and get service. That's not part of the deal. They were supposed to pay us a percentage of what work they did out of that shop. We're going to extend the contract till the end of this year, and then we're going to be right back to square one again, coming over. If we're going to take over, this function, the service provider end of it, and we're going to bring it in-house. I guess the biggest question is, what business are we in when we're talking about the business as a city? And Peter can answer this one. What was our cost to operate last year, the entire marina? What do we net out? I'm sure you've got the numbers. We're halfway through 13. Where do we net out at the marina as a whole last year, including, because I know that there's 2 debentures against the marina. Where do we net out? And I think that in the budget, if I'm thinking correctly, our total operating cost was in the neighborhood of between $650,000 and $700,000. And tell me what we netted out at.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. There's a few questions there, Peter. I think the first question that was asked was, are we in fact losing business? Where are we standing? And I'll let Mark answer that question. But while you get your thoughts, Mark, I think the second question had to do with the lifts, how we're making out with the ins and outs. And the third question, I believe you talked about storage. The one question I want to add to that storage is I noticed on here with the proposal as well as the 2012 actuals, that storage percent to the city would be 75%. Actuals would, compared to 2012, would be 12,140. My question attached to Dave's question would be, that's if the boats were stored on our property. What prevents the contractor from taking the boats off the property and storing them somewhere else? And attached to that, do we then get the 75% or the 12,000? So I want to attach that to that question. And then I think the final question was netting out. Where did we end up last year in 2012 in terms of netting out? Peter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. With regard to first the storage, the proposal that's Martin provided us is that they're offering that 75% come to the city, 25% that they would keep, and from my understanding of the proposal, that's based on that they're providing some security for the storage area, which we're not asking for anybody to provide security for the storage area. It's on city property, and we would be providing that. The proposal basically was that the city, and the model was that the city would provide, would receive 100% of the winter storage. It's on city property. We would receive the full dollars on that. The whole model, I'm just going to get off the line a little bit here, but the whole model that was put in place, even going back to when we hired a consultant to come in, was that the city should be looking at having all of the revenues in order to run it as a business properly. We have all full 100% revenues, whether it's storage, winter control, the shrink wrapping, the gas, and so on. So we've gone 3/4 of the way there. We haven't gone 100% of the way yet, and this is sort of putting us in the Model 1, sort of is bringing us to that point in time. But as far as the storage of winter of boats goes, majority of the storage there is a combination of the larger boats that are lifted out and put on the cradles, and basically, you know, if they have to be moved out, they're going to be moved out. They have to bring in some large machinery or trucks or whatever to move them out, because they're not your power boats that you can just lift them out and put them on the trailers, or pull them out of the water and store them in our city property trailers. Unfortunately, what happened was 2 years ago, the boats that were on trailers were pulled out by Marlin and stored on their own property. Therefore, we lost probably about half of the city storage that was in our property. What prevents that going forward is, with the current agreement, the storage agreements are with the city. Therefore, anybody that stores on the city property, they stay within our property. They can't be moved out. So that's one of the stipulations that we put in under the current agreement that we do have. As far as going forward, though, too, what's being proposed by staff is basically to continue the service of the lift-ins and lift-outs, and the extension with Port Colborne Marine is only for providing us time to get our own staff possibly trained to do the lift-ins, lift-outs. So we're doing the whole full service. Right now, Port Colborne Marine is under agreement that they're providing the lift-ins for the boats that go into the water. Come October, obviously we need somebody to provide the lift-outs. So we would, one of two different things could happen. We put out an RFP in the summertime for a contractor or contract services to provide specifically lift-ins, lift-out service. At the same time in that agreement, that they would be training our staff to provide the lift-in, lift-out service, so that the next season we're able to do it ourselves and we don't have to pay a contractor to do it. That's going towards that 100% service business that we would be in. As far as losing business, what we encountered in 2012 was we did do a business plan that we brought to council, which was in the rate structure, which we reduced the rates. We had two things happen. We had a lot of new customers come in, and we also had some customers that left. And overall, unfortunately, with that, we did lose on the revenue side. Our revenues, budgeted revenues, were not met. As far as the storage fees and the lift-ins and lift-outs, again, that was down based on the number of boats that wanted to store on our property, and a lot of them took their boats out of the water and went elsewhere, and we can't control that. 2012 financials, I can't remember exactly how much or the overall expenditures are on the marina. Last year, yes, we're paying for a new debenture on the purchase of the assets, so we do have that. on the books. We did have loss of revenue on seasonal and transients. We're also down. Transient revenue coming in, and as far as the storage and the lift-ins and lift-outs, that was also down. So our revenues were down. There's no question. Now the question becomes, are we trying to build that up? And that's what Mark's trying to do. And with Harry is build that back up. That we're able to. Our rates are very competitive. We actually had a lot of boaters come from other marinas to come to Sugarloaf Marina and enjoyed it here last year, and our rates are more competitive. So we would hope that with the rate staying the same for this year, that will draw people back to the marina. The marina business, is a cyclical business. Depends on what people have to offer in that type of activity, and so we're hoping that will come back this year. Transients, if the weather gets nice, that people will come to Sugarloaf Marina. We're marketing it, we're advertising it, as Mark is doing, and we're hoping also that we can provide more winter storage on the property. And if we were on the city property, we could expand out into the parking lot. And if our boaters want to provide reasonable storage and at reasonable rates, then we're willing to provide it.
Thank you, Mr. Sinez. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I guess when I look at the financial comparison page, it's page 53 in the package. The city operated revenues are based on 2012's actuals. You're basing it on, could be up to 38,150 from a low of 21,150 to 38,150. Out of that, how many more employees do we have to take on, and what do we net out? I mean, we're going to generate another 38,000 in revenue, but what does it cost us in staff time? Do we have to hire new staff? Do you use existing? I mean, are we just going to generate revenue to pay another staff member?
Mark.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elliott, I believe that's what we are in the process of investigating. So until we do the full investigation, we won't exactly know whether it's a training, hiring. That's what we're investigating, and we'll get back to you.
Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The two columns there that are provided is the minimum and the maximum. And basically, if we were to contract out the service of lift and lift outs, we would require at least 15%. That's the $3,000. If we're able then to move forward, and 100% of the winter storage would be about $20,000. Obviously, if we increase customers, that's going to increase also. But that would be the maximum, and that's moving forward to determine getting particularly our staff trained. We do have. I think we have qualified staff on board right now that we would be able to bring in under the wing of somebody that's able to show us and train us how to provide the proper services of lifting in and lifting out, and whether or not we would have to then determine whether or not there's any other capital equipment that we may have to purchase at some point in time in order to do that. But in the meantime, we would be looking to contract out that particular service only, and be able to bring in a minimum amount of revenue for the city and move towards maximizing our revenue.
Thanks.
Councillor Elliott, I'm going to go one more with you, and then I'm going to bounce around, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah,
So I got a few other ones
that's fine.
shot out there.
It's just that the overall thing we talked about, and I know our last meeting last Monday, our short meeting to approve the AGCO approval for our licenses, and Councillor Kenny had mentioned about flavors, saving money. And here we look at, you don't know if you're going to hire somebody to do the job, and we're looking at generating $38,000 in revenue. If you got to take somebody on, it's net zero. And you know, you want to create new revenue, but we don't create new revenue. You want to contract it out. You know, we got somebody that was successful at it before, and for some reason, we went away. You know, do we do an exit survey of our customers? Do you ask them what they want? I mean, let's provide to our customers what the customers are asking for. We'll set the parameters. We'll have somebody come in and work under that. I guess my last question is, have we done a survey of the marina proper? Everything. Buildings, docks, pylons, electrical, showers, all the buildings. Have we done everything? And do we have a report, or could you bring a report forward that says, this is what we're looking at, an investment in capital going forward? If we're going to keep it, what do we have to invest in it in the next 3, 5, 10 years? I know that when we had talked about RFPing the whole marina, and we stopped that, and we kept it in-house, what's the cost going forward to maintain it, to upgrade it, so that we can provide services for customers? I don't know that, and I guess that's part of what are we in a debenture going forward, but we got to know, where do we stand right now? Maybe it may make some difference in, do we keep this in-house, or do we say to somebody else, you know what, you can come take this over for the next 25, 30, 50 years, and you can run it and pay us a fee? I don't know. I don't know where we stand on that. So I'll reserve a couple of comments for later.
Thank you, Councillor. Peter?
With regard to reviewing the infrastructure, that was part of our 2013 budget, but council has set aside money for us to hire somebody to come in, and we were going to review that so that we can get a report back to council on what the infrastructure is of the marina, and that would come back to the city, to the council for review once we have that report. So we haven't done that yet, but it is in the budget for us to provide that particular service and bring it.
Thank you, Mr. Sinez. Mr. Howe?
Through your worship, very quickly, council's made some significant changes already in the marina. It is work in progress. There are more changes to go, and we're working on them. It is a venture that can earn some money. Are we in the business? Currently we are. Right now, we are turning this around, and what you have seen and what was presented in the analysis is a venture that will earn some money, net money, so that this certainly doesn't cost anything to the city. It has in the past. The intention is not to, and is to provide for further development of that asset, which is a very, very important asset at this end of Lake Erie, and really important for this city as South Coast tourist area. The intention is to bring back to council a full plan, which is going to provide for gains in income and full capital replacement without cost. Is it more staff? There isn't going to be. If there's a net cost, your worship, we will be back here in an immediate second to tell you to dump it, because it's not going to be in your business plan, and that's what you have directed at this past.
Thank you. Councillor Danch.
Through you, I think this is going to go to Mark. I did some phoning around. Unlike Councillor Elliott, I like to boat. I've got a little 23-footer that I've had for years, and it's my pride and joy. So, not to say what I do in my spare time, but I was going to put my boat in Dunnville this year. I can't get a slip. I was going to go to the Dunnville Boat Club. I can't get a slip. I called Vic Powell's. I can't get a slip. I can go on the other side of the Dunnville River, but I'd rather not. There's no access to Lake Erie. So if I want to head out the other way, if I want to go to Birdie Bay, I'm limited as far as what size dock I can get. I said I have a 23-foot boat. The yacht club's not for me. I don't want to pay money and get shuttled to my boat. How many slips do we have available in Port Colborne right now?
Mark?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Danch. Based on last year's numbers and this year, we're looking about the same. We benchmark 400 for seasonals, 300 for transients. That's 700 in total. Last year we were approximately about 335. So we do have some docks for you if you wanted to bring your boat here. Yeah, we are under the 400, which is basically our where we'd like to be. And I think we're working on getting there. Last year, I believe we had about 90-something new boaters. We did lose a few, so it's just retaining those current customers. This year, I don't know the numbers as far as the new customers. That's actually, we're working on that today, so I can get you that report. But numbers are looking about the same, so we're going to be looking at that 330 mark.
What's the numbers in Dunville and Birdie?
As far as seasonals? I guess, yeah, I guess they're at capacity.
So what would the capacity be?
I think they're well under 700.
So they as big as we are, or are they smaller?
They're smaller.
They're a lot smaller?
Yeah. And just like Port Dover as well. Their capacity waiting list, 400 docks. So it'd be nice to have that waiting list.
It'd be nice to know, we have 300 and some odd slips taken, how much Dunville, in terms of how many slips they have taken, and how much Birdie has taken, just to give apples to apples versus not.
Yeah. The goal is to get the waiting list.
Great, thank you. Councilor?
I know years ago I was in Marlins, and I spent, I don't know, 10 years down there, and they were a good provider. Last year when I visited the marina, I spent 3 days there, and nobody here even knows I was there because nobody ever approached me, and nor did I ever pay for it. I went in, I was broke down, I parked my boat, I came back 3 days later, pulled my boat out, see you later. We're not doing a good job. We need to improve on it. If going towards Marlin Marina is the way to go, then I think maybe that's the way to go. But the way we've gone about it the last few years, it's just money thrown away. Not in favor of it.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Demery?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It really disturbs me to hear this tonight because we've spent the last year having a great number of discussions around the marina because of how unhappy we were, how dissatisfied we were with what was going on there. We've made some big changes. So to turn around and try to measure it at this point, I think is just wrong-headed. It's far too early. We've embarked upon a path. We should give it some time. Let it work out. We're going to do our very best with things. As Mr. Howell said, if it comes to the point where it's costing us money, we're going to put a brake on very quickly. But in the meantime, give it time to develop. Let's see what we can do. We've made it very clear that we would like to be in control of what goes on in that marina. So let's be in control. Let's get it done properly. We've made the changes, but we haven't given it time to for the changes to have an effect. It takes a while. It really does. And to change the reputation takes a while as well. So give it some time.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kenny?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question through you to Peter. Mr. Grabowski, he sent us, all councillors I'm sure got it, an email with...
I didn't get it.
You didn't?
No.
Well, we got it. You didn't either? Well, he sent it to all council. If you made the error of not sending it to the mayor, that's your mistake, and not sending it to our CAO, that's your mistake. And Peter, a question to you. In his proposal, he tells us a couple of things which I need to have clarification. He says that the current service provider only paid 33% of his property taxes. And so I need to know if that's fact or fiction, because I get that every now and then. And I want to know why it says on here, and I think he meant property taxes. He's got no why on it, but I think he meant property taxes, right? He's got, why was our offer of $5,000 per year chopped by 2/3 and expressed as a no guarantee? That's what he sent us. So those two questions I need to ask. And I got to get out of here and get to my other thing, because my high antidote. I don't see that in the report that we got, the Marina financial comparison. So if you could help me out, that would be great.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Kenny. As far as Port Colborne Marine property taxes, whatever the assessed value was on the property, they were billed those taxes and paid those taxes. I'm not sure what 30%
okay.
taxes are on that. As far as the 5% maximum here, that was the proposal that came from Marlin Marine. that they only wanted to pay $5,000 in property taxes. We can't guarantee that. It is whatever the assessment office assesses the building at. We apply the property taxes. That's what the property taxes are.
That's what I needed to know.
As far as the amounts on the actuals, basically a third of the property taxes is the region, a third is the city,
Right.
and a third is the school boards. And what I put on, what is on the financial chart here is the city's portion of taxes that we would be collecting, not the region and the school boards.
Yes, because, so it shows here that the rental of the, same thing, the rental of the apartment has got included in above. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then, I gotta keep switching back because I have to go to his email compared to what our council package. And there's also, I believe this is from him because it's in our report that we got in our package. And it says contract out service for launch haul-out with the potential for future training of staff to provide the service. Well, that's what we're doing. Are we not doing that, Peter? Are we not training or getting training for staff to provide that service?
At this point in time, no. That's
Okay.
what we are proposing now.
That's what you're
that we
proposing.
would do that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Further comments or questions? Councillor Elliott. I'm sorry, Councillor Doucette. I'll come back to you in a second, Dave.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Going back to, through you to either Mr. Hakeem or Mr. Sinez, in the past, when there's been an RFP, and there needs to be negotiations and going back to the individual that did the RFP, we usually go to the person that gives us that RFP. In this case, we are going to someone who did not give us anything. And I just want to know whether historically we've been doing that, or whether it is something that we should be doing, or I'm concerned about the process more than anything else right now. And the process doesn't sound kosher to me, and I have some concerns, especially with the fact that that email that Councillor Kenny indicated states that there has been no communication of any kind with Marlin.
Mr. Sinez?
Well, first of all, I haven't seen the email, so I don't know what they're talking about or anything like that, which I think is unfortunate that we weren't privy to the email that all of council has and was received. But besides that, as far as our proposal of going, basically we're not going back to the Port Colborne Marine. What we are doing is Port Colborne Marine is our current service provider. Their agreement ends June 30th. And what we're saying is, in order to not disrupt customer service, because they are putting in the boats right now, that if we do not have a contractor or another contract services in place for October or November when boats are actually pulled out, that we have our backup plan, that we have Port Colborne Marine, which is already now working our current service, that they are there to ensure that the service is provided in October. And so that we have that flexibility. And because they are the current service provider and we have the agreement with them at this point in time.
Thank you. Mr. Howe?
Your Worship, if Council will recall, they had approved Port Colborne Marine as the service provider in the last bid. It wasn't the recommended option, but it wasn't Council had selected. This option at this point in time is a stopgap measure to get us. This is still Council's preferred supplier based on the report that was approved and presented in Council a year ago or a year and a half ago. We have no intention, Your Worship, of extending any kind of contract for any length of time which would be considered, I'm going to say, RFPable or tenderable. We're looking at a stopgap measure here until we can get our ducks in order. The changes being made in the marina are in the past 4 months. Everybody's aware of it, and we need the time. We're not asking to go out and do an RFP, or if we reject what's there, we're going to have a break in service. And we're trying to turn this marina around into a very positive customer service-based entity, so that, in fact, we will be the I guess, the premier arena on Lake Erie at this end of the lake. That's what we're trying to do. And the extension is not for anything other than to buy us some time.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Further questions or comments? Councillor Butters?
I just have one question. In the contract with Port Colborne Marine, is there some part of that contract that allows for extension? Because my thought process is if they're finished out the June 30th, if that's when it ends, then what would happen if, they left?
Mr. Howe?
They're currently working on an extension right now, Your Worship. You will recall that Council had approved the temporary extension to this period of time, and there is a memo of understanding. I am under the understanding that that they are agreeable to continue with what they're doing at this point in time. It has not been negotiated. I know, because we don't have council approval to do that, but there has been some indication that if we need to buy some time, it's there.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. That's fine. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to Councillor Demeray, we made changes last year with the service provider. Council switched it out, took Port Colborne Marine. Obviously didn't go over well because nobody used their services. They didn't hardly operate. The service shop wasn't open half the time. There was nobody there. And as far as Councillor Kenny was talking, if you look at the financial comparison, Marlon proposed to pay $5,000 maximum in property taxes. But you show it here as a $5,000 maximum, and them only paying 33% of that $5,000 maximum, which I think is incorrect. They're saying that they would pay $5,000. Let me finish. Because if you look over on the right, the 2012-13 agreement with Port Colborne Marine said they were going to supposed to pay $14,772. They only paid $5,000. Well, I'm looking at it and it says the agreement, under the agreement column says 14,772 and the actual says 5,000. So that's wrong?
Mr. Sinez?
No, it is correct. That is the city's portion of the taxes. The overall tax of the property was $14,772. The city's portion was $5,000, and I made a notation at the bottom. The city receives approximately 1/3 of property taxes paid. So basically, the city is receiving $5,000 of the $14,772 in taxes. The maximum of the $5,000 under the proposal, of the $5,000 maximum that they're requesting, the city would receive $1,667, which is 1/3 of property tax. It's the city's portion.
So what you're telling me is Port Colborne Marine last year paid $15,000 in property tax?
Peter?
Correct. That was the tax bills.
And how much is being proposed under this proposal?
$5,000.
Councillor?
So they actually wrote us a check for $15,000 for property taxes.
Peter?
The property taxes that was assessed to them was $14,772. Yes, in 2012.
But 5,000 came to the city and the rest went to the
5,000
region
came to
and
the city, the
education.
rest we pay to the regions and the school boards.
Education province.
Because we're the collection agency.
Right, so we collected $15,000 from Port Colborne Marine.
That's what they were billed, yes.
I'd like to know what they did in total revenue then. That's pretty good. The way I'm seeing it, it looks like they actually only paid $5,000, the way that it's listed here. I mean, you show the $6,000 they paid in rental of the building and everything like that. You don't break it out that says they paid $14,772. Why wouldn't you show that as revenue to the city?
Because
we in turn wrote a check to the region, right? So you want to show all your money coming in.
Peter?
Before you're sending it out.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The property tax bill is the full property tax bill, which includes the three agencies, $14,772. The reason $5,000 is shown in on the actuals, that is what we receive as a city. What we pay to the region, the school boards, doesn't matter to the city because we don't receive that money. So that's why the $5,000 is there, to show exactly how much revenue that the city is actually bringing in with regard to all the rent, the launches, storage, and property taxes that the city receives. If we do not rent out that building, then as you see under city operated revenues, it's zero. Because if we If it comes under the city, it becomes exempt property. There is no property taxes, which means also the region, the school boards lose their property tax share.
Councillor?
I just wish it was shown differently, because we still, like you said, we collect the 15,000 total, right? And then we have to cut a check. Right, we collect it, and then we have to forward the money to somebody else, right?
We do that with
That's,
everything.
right, you're taking the 15,000 in, you're dispersing it somewhere else, right?
No, hold on a second. Mr. Hoyle?
Yeah.
Legally, the city of Port Colborne is merely and solely the collection agency.
Yeah.
The money doesn't come into, if the cash comes in, it's segregated and it's immediately written.
And
It never enters the books of the city.
And that's what I wanted to find, because here, the way that it just looks like, this is what the agreement said, and it looks like they only paid 5,000, to me, when I'm looking at it, you know, because you've got, the agreement says 6,000 for the rent, and they paid 6,000, and then 2,400 for the rental of the apartment, and they paid 24. And then when you get down to the bottom, it says, the agreement says pay 14,772.
And it's netted out at 5,000, which the city received.
The city received,
And
but
it
when you
identifies that.
extend those columns over, it looks like, okay, they paid this, they paid that. Whoa, hang on a second, they only paid 5,000 of that, but they paid the whole 15,000. That's what I want. I want to know that they paid the full property tax. So when you say that they're 5,000 maximum on the other side is what they're willing to pay, I can understand why you're only crediting 1667 to the city share, right? And that's what I want to know, so that when you look at it, all the figures line up and it says, yeah, okay, you paid this, we kept it and gave the rest away. Because the way that I looked at it, it looks like they only paid 1/3 of what they were supposed to pay. And that's a problem that I had. The numbers didn't line up. So this is an issue, and Frank and I spoke about this before, about what we were doing the last time this came around, and got voted down, and that's council's decision. I'll still stand by the way I voted last time, in that I don't think we should be in the marina business. No offense to Mark, no offense to anybody that works down there. But if you're in business, I'm going to say out there, and you're throwing $700,000 a year at a business that you're running, and you net, what have we netted in previous years? 10, 20,000? Maybe a little bit more. You're not going to be in business very long, because you can't spend $700,000 a year and only net 20. It doesn't work. You're not, your return on investment, people are looking for 11, 12%. We're getting 1, 2, maybe 3% return. That doesn't work. We're taking a look at what business we should be in. This isn't one of them. I think we should listen to our customers. It didn't work last year when Port Colborne Marine came in. They didn't like the service they got. People left. They didn't do any business down there. They were supposed to pay us a percentage of what they did. They didn't. The percentage rent, you might as well throw that out, because they obviously didn't do hardly any business through their through the shop. So from what I hear, and like I say, Frank's the boater. I don't know how many else are. I've talked to people outside that have boats. They say, why just can't you bring those guys back, because they did a good job? And I'm thinking, we have the opportunity, why wouldn't we? If you'd like Greg to speak, because not everybody got the email, he's here. Could ask for leave of counsel. He can come up and explain what he sent out in email to those that didn't get it. I would ask for that leave if you'd like him to speak. If he even wants to speak, go ahead. If not, I can live with that, but I'm not going to support this.
Thank you, Councillor. So first off, I have Councillor Elliott asking for leave to allow Mr. Rogalski to speak. Do I have a seconder to that? Councillor Danch, any questions or comments on that? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Mr. Rogalski?
Mr. Mayor, Council, senior staff, I haven't prepared anything for tonight. Where do you start? I've been working down there since 1988, beginning of the project. I worked for the city for 5 years. I'm not standing here to say, pick Marlin Marine. If you choose not to go with us, that's fine. Been very passionate about the facility for this long. I'm a taxpayer, tired of seeing a loss of customers. We see it all the time. I got people chasing, they're going to St. Catharines, they've come through the canal this year, they're going back. The numbers speak for themselves. Drive through the storage yard, it's half full, 100 boats to 51. What's next this year? I'm here because our customer, Sugarloaf's customers, city's customers, have asked Marlon to come here and put a proposal together. At those numbers, no one goes into business for those numbers. Not at all, ever. 100% of nothing is nothing, right? So this is based on nothing almost last year. We had a proven track record, 35 years, 36 years down there, revenue. Did we make money? A little bit. Did we lose money some years? Absolutely. You know, it's a job. It's a passion. We're in the service business now. We're in the retail business now. That's not what my passion is. It was in the marina business. The docks, that's where it's all about. That's where the boaters are. That's what they care about. Do they want certain people to work on their boats? I guess they do. They look at them as their babies. So, you know, being a premier facility on Lake Erie, is it possible still? Yeah, it is. But read some boating magazines. We're at the bottom of the scale here in Port Colborne. People have pools, indoor heated storage. It doesn't happen immediately. But the city's been in the marina business since 1988. How long does it take? Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments to the presenter?
Do you have any questions? I can stand, my kids tell me not to filibuster, so that's it.
No questions or comments? Actually, I met your boy the other night at my brother-in-law's place. Great boy. Members of council? None? Thanks, Greg. Further comments or questions? Councillor Bodnar?
I guess I'm a little perplexed that we hashed out a lot of stuff, and I think Councillor Maris touched on that, you know, we wanted to go in a certain direction. Was it a really good year? No, it wasn't a really good year. Have we learned a little bit? Hopefully we have. And I don't like this flipping back and forth, you know? You know, I like the idea of somebody having passion for the marina and really, you know, want to do the best for it. And I think that the city and Marlin had its challenges. I don't think that's, you know, I think we had some challenges there, and we decided to go in a different direction. I can live with an extension for this year to, you know, to really see if we can do what we think we can do. I don't have a big appetite for going for quite a few years. I think we, you know, we either make the decision to move forward and try our best to get to a break-even point, hopefully make some money. Weather has a lot to do with the marina. I'm sure people left because they love Marlin. I know people left because Marlin wasn't there. That's no mystery. Will some of those people come back? They might. They might not. We won't know that unless we get into another boating season. So, you know, as much as I can see the points made by Councillor Elliott and Councillor Danch, I still think that we should stick by our guns and do that extension to the end of the year, see where we get to, and then weigh the pros and cons then and move on. Again, we're doing this kind of at the last minute. It doesn't sit well with me. I think we should have this discussion in the winter time, you know, for the next summer. We can't continually do this when we're under the gun. It makes no sense. So I would vote for an extension, and but I certainly am losing patience with any more extensions on this. Thanks, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor. If I can just make a few comments and sort of delve into this. I wasn't going to, but I'm going to now. Just based on what I heard and based on the information that I'm just reading now. And I want to preface my comments by stating that, guys, it would have been nice to have this forwarded to myself and the CAO, and I'm not sure why you didn't. I look at the email, and thanks, Barb, and thanks, Frank, for forwarding it to me within the last 5 minutes. It's forwarded to our regional councillor, Barrick. It's forwarded to all members of the council. It's not forwarded to myself. It's not forwarded to our CAO, and it's not forwarded to our Director of Community Services nor our manager. And quite frankly, guys, at the end of the day, and I tell this to a lot of people, I'm not too concerned how you feel about me personally or about them personally, but it would be nice to show some respect to the Mayor's office, the CAO's office, the office of the directors, just simply to give us the information prior to the meeting. It would have been nice. Because I know personally, like every member of council, we take a lot of time going through these reports, and any extra information that we can be afforded does help. You might have a perception that I'm one way or the other. I'm not. I'm looking at these things as both a mayor as well as a business person. And there's good points from both sides. Councillor Elliott raises some very valid points, especially with respect to the direction that council's taken. I think the best point he made this evening that resonated with me personally, I'm sure with members of council, is the fact of council deciding what business we're actually in. And having said that, council made a decision over a year ago when the agreement, the 20-year agreement with Marlin was exhausted, and that was forced upon the city by the federal government. I think we all recognize that. And with that, it limited the generation of any kind of revenues with respect to us being somewhat in the business. We never had the ability to actually get into the business until that 20 years was exhausted. And so it's somewhat unfair for anyone to sit around this horseshoe or anywhere in the community and say that we've had all the opportunity since 1988 when we did not. I've been in the marina business, twice the size of the marina that we have here in Port Colborne. I get it. And at the end of the day, the city has somewhat been, the albatross around the city's neck has been the limited opportunities that we've had besides slips. We never had the opportunity with storage. We never had the opportunity with hauling in and hauling out. We never had the mechanical opportunities. We never had the retail opportunities, rental opportunities, the fuel opportunities, the pump out opportunities, and the other activities that we're starting to see in the marina now, such as the wakeboarding and stuff like that, because of the albatross the federal government forced upon us when this agreement was first struck back in 1988. The second point I want to make is going back to council's decision. Council's decision was to look at getting in the business, and I respect that. Agree with it or not, either we sell, we lease, or we do as we're doing now in terms of getting into business, and I want to make this very clear. The reason why I believe council made that decision was to mitigate the exposure to the taxpayers, to try and gain revenues, to try and net out, as Councillor Elliott stated, in a positive versus a negative when we had that albatross around our neck. And I want to be very clear, because the public may forget about that conveniently very easily, is the albatross that this council, this corporation, has had around our neck with respect to being limited to generating revenue at that facility. Having said that, somebody was generating revenue. And to some extent, that's why they're here this evening, interested in continuing that. And others, not just them, anybody. So when it looks like, when we look at what could have been, where were those revenues going? And with that said, what was it netting out at? The third point I want to make is in fact the direction of council. Any member of council has an opportunity to stand up and state, as Councillor Elliott did, and I give you credit for that, Councillor Elliott, because it was a bold move, because it can be a very subjective issue out in the community, and I give you credit for actually standing up and saying it versus sitting on the fence, and thank you for that, because that conversation has to be had. Are we in the business, or are we out? But any member of council, through the opportunity of our business planning and our services audit, which is what that audit process is all about, can stand up and put that on the table and discuss that very issue. So if that's your feelings, then say it, bring it forward, and let's discuss it, versus doing this. Circles. I don't think, for the most part, we're at a last-minute decision. This has been going on for the last year. And this is just simply the result of those discussions, as well as the direction that has been set by council. The last point I want to make is with the changes that have been made, and Mark being brought on board and leading the organization now, along with Harry and Peter, we do have opportunities to net out with some revenues. Now it's just a matter of council, as Councillor Bodner stated, wants to finish off that exercise. Once again, slips, storage, haul in and haul outs. Let's face it, guys, since 1988, the only revenue the city was receiving was from the rental of slips. Pardon me? Not all of them, no, it's just some of them. What was the number that we were receiving? 350 out of the total?
Yeah, about that.
About that? That's all we were receiving. Because of that albatross that was forced upon us by the federal government when the deal was first struck back in 1988. Very familiar with that deal. I know people that were involved in that discussion. Very familiar with it. And it wasn't fair to the city. It wasn't fair to the taxpayers of Port Colborne. And that's what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to make it fair to the taxpayers of Port Colborne. Hey guys, at the end of the day, you know, Marlin does a great job. They do great work. I know they do. Okay, and if it's in fairness to the taxpayers that we bring that back on board, then so be it. Then make that decision. But I think council, a year ago, made a decision that we do have opportunity here to gain more revenue for the taxpayers, to mitigate the exposure to the taxpayers. Besides slips, we now, since the 20 years albatross is done, we now have an opportunity for storage, haul in, haul outs, fuel, mechanical, retail, rent, pump outs, etc. And there is a lot of opportunity there. And yes, as the presenter stated, there's going to be good years and there's going to be bad years. That's part of business. So the decision that you're making now within the audit process, within the services process, is are we in this business or are we not? What staff is asking for tonight is to bridge the process, to essentially take us a few months into the future, and then to go from there to see if in fact we want to be in that business. There was a lot of discussion being had for the last year. Are we going to stop short now, as Councillor Bodner stated? That's up to you. Or are we going to pull the plug and move forward with a different provider? So with that, members, I'll ask if there's any more further questions or comments. Councillor Butters.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Members, question's been called. It's your pleasure to the motion. You all understand the motion? Everybody's clear on it? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 2. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Department of Corporate and Community Services, Community Service Division, report number 2013-19, regional bylaw to regulate smoking in an outdoor public place. The Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne hereby endorses the regional bylaw proposed to regulate smoking in an outdoor public place subject to the following exclusions.
Did you want to add some exclusions, Councillor?
I would like to hear a little debate first, and then we can probably go around, and I'm sure we'll have a small list. I'll start off. I used to be a smoker. Good thing I quit. I guess one thing I hate about government is when government intrudes into the private lives of people, and when we're regulating on where people smoke outside in the fresh air. First of all, we told them you couldn't smoke inside. Now we're telling them you can't smoke outside. But nobody will take that first step and say, we're just going to outlaw smoking altogether, boom, boom, because those revenues are an awful good thing to have. If Harry wants to make comment on this, I guess when I read the report, the one thing that jumps out to me, and I'll put it out for discussion right now, I would like to see no smoking at the Valley Health and Wellness Center at all. Not on the property. Go and stand on the sidewalk. Don't smoke at the soccer fields, at the baseball diamond. Sorry to you smokers, but it's a health and wellness center for a reason.
Councillor, if I can just interject.
Yep.
I apologize.
Yep.
The regional bylaw is very clear with respect to public places, city-owned, operated, regionally owned, operated. What we're looking for here with this, so that's a given. Those facilities are a given. All we're looking for right now is, and this is the reason why I really wanted to come back to the municipalities, was because there are some anomalies in the region that may cause concern and therefore might be a stick in the mud for the ultimate bylaw. So I think what we're looking for right now is, in terms of Port Colborne, what are you looking at in terms of exemptions? Now, you remember, keep it in mind, of course, that we're talking about city-run or owned facilities only. Okay, Councillor?
So I guess that leads us into Market Square for Canal Days. Do you have to regulate the streets as well, as in West Street, H.H. Knoll Park?
So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hakeem, sidewalks and streets are exempt?
Are exempt.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Under the current bylaw, the way it reads, yes. However, I think when we formulate a plan for a festival or an event, those properties, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, CAO, they become park-like settings. So technically, then the bylaw should be enforced under the current wording of the regional bylaw.
I think some of the anomalies, just to give some thought to council, just to get your head around this. When I was at regional council, at public health actually, at the standing committee, the things that popped in my mind when they were presenting this to us was events, festivals, you know, having designated areas versus just outright banning it is a possibility. I just wanted to throw it at you guys, just so it doesn't catch you off guard when the event happens and all of a sudden you receive all these complaints and you have to react after the fact. The second one was the beach, Nickel Beach. Those are the two that resonated with me, and that's why I thought it necessary to bring it back to you folks to discuss. Dave?
Yeah, that's, I mean, when we get into festivals and events, do you have to set a bylaw? Do you have to determine the boundaries that those events encompass? I mean, do we have to draft a bylaw that says you can smoke on West Street, Charlotte, Sugarloaf for a portion, H.H. Knoll? I mean, if you're going to have to delineate your smoking area, it becomes pretty tough to do that.
I know, and if sorry, Councilor,
Yep.
I'm just trying to keep the flow here. I know in like Canada's Wonderland and places like that, being a parent of young ones who are frequenting those areas often, I noticed that there's certain areas that are designated smoking areas. So I think that's what was in
Is that
mind.
is that what we're looking for? Yeah, I mean, we'd have to for sure designate Market Square. You'd have to designate H.H. Knoll if you want to do anything in between. I mean, I guess it becomes an enforcement issue, right? If you designate the square as a smoking area, you know, do people know that? Out of town people, you come in and you're outside and you're walking down the street and you're smoking because you're on a city street. You know, do you say, walk up to them, give them a warning and say it's not a smoking area? I mean, there's a whole lot of issues around that. But for sure, I'll nominate the Market Square and H.H. Knoll as designated smoking areas. If you want to fill in the blanks in between, be my guest.
Okay, so we have discussion here. I have Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Doucette. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would suggest that there's not much point in saying we're banning smoking in an area if it's not enforceable. And I can't see it being enforceable on West Street through the festivals. I just can't see that. But I do believe that every park should be smoke-free, festival or not. I think H.H. Knoll should be smoke-free. However, I do believe that the marina docks, you should be allowed to smoke on the marina docks. You can smoke on your boat. You might as well be able to smoke on the dock. Not in the buildings, but on the dock. As for that, I just believe every public park and every city facility should be smoke-free. And I'm definitely a former smoker who would have really, really not liked this before. But I do appreciate how very important it is. And I now appreciate how intrusive it is to have someone smoking around you. I really do. And it's something that we do need to take those steps. But it's just not enforceable during a festival. I just can't see that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Doucette and Councillor Kenny.
Thank you very much, sir. She brought it up.
Okay, Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. When I first heard the presentation, I can honestly tell you, I thought, holy moly, just like Councillor Elliott, I was thinking, now they're going to tell you where you can smoke. You can't smoke in any facility or anything, and I'm not a smoker. Never have been, but I thought to myself, now, look at these people who are smokers, who are ruining their own health, who have made that decision to ruin their own health. Every time they light up, right? I always say they're just making that coffin a little bit tighter, you know? But that's their decision. However, after speaking to some people at the soccer fields who have young kids, including my own grandchildren, they find it very offensive when somebody lights up. But that's that person who does not have enough respect to stand up and move away. It's that person who is not respectful of a family with children. They could get up, walk away, and have their cigarette, but they do not, because I guess they feel it is their right. However, now since I've talked to her and talked to a few others who are there, I guess I have to change my mind and say that in facilities like that, I do not believe there should be smoking, because if you don't have enough respect for anybody's children that you would sit there and light up a cigarette and blow the smoke into their face, shame on you, because that is disrespectful, very disrespectful. But people do it. But on events that we have, I think as Councillor Desmarais, it's pretty hard to police that, because they could stand outside on the sidewalk that surrounds the park, on that sidewalk, and stand and smoke away, right? There's a sidewalk there. They could go ahead and do that. There's fishing for kids there, but the parents could, or people who smoke could sit there and smoke away, and the kids are still exposed to it, I guess. So I would like to suggest that we have that we do endorse it, with the exception for our two major events that we have. I think it's important that it's pretty hard to police, and the cost of police, and I understand from this report, the tobacco cops are going to be covered by the region. Is that not correct? Right now, I know we have them for the NHS. We have people who actually catch people smoking on hospital grounds, and they have been their picture taken, and when they say, "Oh, that wasn't me," they go, "Actually, it was you," and they get fined. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, if someone could answer that question,
Yeah.
is that being covered by the? It is.
Mr. Hakeem?
A large, yes, in the short form, but a large part of this is also working with municipal bylaw officers, and I'm not sure to what level they've engaged in terms of getting a level of cooperation. But it would be the tobacco control officers that would be responding. But the discussions they've had through the municipal consultation process with staff, and including the municipal bylaw officers, they would extend that the municipal bylaw officers would have the authority to issue the tickets as well, but I'm not sure to what level they've discussed that with local municipalities or not yet.
Thank you. Okay. Further questions, comments, members? Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councillor, you're asking that H.H. Knoll Park be allowed to have smoking, like all the time?
Only during an event.
Only during an event? Yeah. Okay. So I guess I could live with that, because, you know, we've had no dogs at Canal Days rule not being able to be enforced, even when we tried to do it, when we put up signs. I know we made a concerted effort to no avail, you know. So, you know, we could say, yeah, we're going to have no smoking, but the reality of the situation is it ain't going to happen. So, you know, and so I guess I'll live with the during events. And so you're asking specifically for Market Square, the streets that we close that are designated parks when we close them for an event are exempt, and the whole H.H. Knoll Park. Councilor Butters, did you bring up the docks? I'm just trying to. Angie? Okay. Are we bringing that into the whole equation? Okay. All right.
If I may suggest something for consideration in the discussion, because it's difficult, you know, especially when you're looking at an event. And you know, my concern is that if you exempt, for example, the park, H.H. Knoll Park, and you got some guy with a cigar and a cigarette in his mouth, or her mouth, and you got kids behind him, and it's most, what I would suggest that you might want to consider doing for events is designating smoking areas. I think people are well versed with that because of the amusement parks. I think, when you go into an event type or a festival type atmosphere environment, like an amusement park, whether it be Darien Lake or Canada's Wonderland or something like that, they already have designated smoking areas. So I think people are well versed in that. They're used to that. If you just blanket it and say you're allowed or disallowed, well, you're not going to be able to force if you say you're not allowed, and if you are allowed, I don't think it's right. You got kids beside adults, and they're smoking, and it's not good. It's just not proper, and it's just not for the same reasons why you shouldn't have them at fields. So what I would suggest that council may want to consider in terms of exemptions is allowing municipalities during a festival or an event to put in place designated smoking areas. And quite frankly, in our situation, it wouldn't be very difficult to do. Just, get off West Street and go on King Street, and have your cigarette there, because it's not within the venue, on the sidewalk somewhere there, versus right in the middle of a whole bunch of kids or a whole bunch of people that don't smoke. The beach, we haven't discussed the beach. Nickel Beach, same situation. Very difficult to police, very inconvenient because people are usually not moving around. They're sitting in one spot for the better part of a whole day. So do you want to outright exempt the beach, or do you want to have designated areas, smoking areas at the beach as well? So I'm trying to get some flow here. I'm trying to get some thought process here. I have some hands up here. Councillor Demery, then Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you've hit it on the head. Designated smoking areas are the way around it. That way, if people are smoking, you can approach them and say, smoking area is down there, and it's not something that you must enforce then. You don't have to get a bylaw officer out there and issue a ticket. You're directing them to the smoking area. Eventually, it does catch on and it works well, but areas like the beach, if you do that and people are smoking out of the area, you can enforce it if you have the opportunity to. It's just that you don't have to, because otherwise it's going to be crazy. But designated smoking areas will work really well. I'm just not thrilled with the idea of smoking in the parks, because that's really where the kids are found.
Councillor Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like the idea of a designated area. I think too that maybe with kind of a twist on option 2 and posting signs and if they're properly worded, that would encourage people to be smoke-free in that area, and then to direct them to a designated area. So we could probably, tweak that option 2 and meld it into a designated area as your suggestion. That kind of makes, I don't know, I think that some people, if we could put some of that kind of signage up out and about, it would get the message across in a way that maybe encourages people to, respect the fact that there's kids running around, and whether that's at a park or the beach or whatever. Maybe encourage people to take a moment to think about it and say, you know what, I could go over there and do this. Because let's face it, smoking in itself is not illegal. Buying tobacco is not illegal, whether it's good for you or not. And I'm a reformed smoker for like 4 years, smoke-free, yippee, and I'm glad of that. But people have the right to do whatever they want to their own bodies, but they don't have the right to inflict that, as far as I'm concerned, on children. But or others, yeah. But I mean, at least with kids, really, we're supposed to protect them.
Sure.
An adult should be able to say, you know what, you're really bugging me. Move along.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I guess to Harry. What's the level of enforcement? I mean, the region's going to look after this. The region's an awful big place. Are we going to have the TCOs, tobacco control officers, here when we have an event on to walk the festival grounds to see what's going on? Once you don't have festivals, do they come randomly? I really hate to say it's an exercise in futility on the enforcement side, because the chances of catching somebody having a cigarette in an area that they're not supposed to be, you'd have to be in town and see somebody do that. I get it when there's large crowds and you got somebody in town for an event, but on a normal Monday afternoon in the summertime when there's hardly anybody around and somebody's having a cigarette in a park, what's the chances you're gonna catch the person? You know, have they stated a level of how many officers they're gonna have? How do they patrol? Where do they patrol? You know, I mean, it's a heck of a large area to cover, and to be in one spot to catch somebody, I get the idea, I like the idea. Yeah, you can reinforce it and change people's habit. It's a culture shift. I think you're seeing a lot of it now. But I guess on the enforcement side, leaves a lot to be up in the air for that. I don't know if you have any comments on what they say the level's gonna be?
Thank you, Councillor. I can answer that, Harry. I asked the very question at the region, and yes. You know, no, they can't get everybody. Obviously, nor can a police officer when you're speeding down the 140, 58, QEW, or 401. However, they will have enforcement. I'll tell you a story. One of my truck drivers got pulled over by the smoke police. For smoking in the truck. It's a workplace. And he got pulled over and he got warned. Next time you get caught, you're getting ticketed. He was driving a truck. He wasn't walking down the street in plain sight of everybody. He was actually driving the truck. And he got pulled over. And then he came into my office. I happened to be at the shop, and he came to my office and told me about it. Oh yeah, I was shocked. You what? Good on you, but good for him. Good for him. You know, he caught him. He warned him, and then he came into the office and told me about it and said to me, you know, this is something that we do, and yes, or no, we're not going to catch everybody, but you can be rest assured we're out there. We're out there. So, you know, are they going to get everybody? No. Are they going to try? Yes. One of the things that we may want to consider, Council, and I'll throw this out to you, just again, to come to some conclusion on this, is to support the bylaw, to have 2 exemptions considered with respect to smoking areas at Nickel Beach and during festivals and events. Okay, what did I say? Yeah, designated smoking areas. But one thing I like you to consider, because sidewalks and roads aren't a part of this bylaw, correct? They're exempt. What I would do is actually take it a step further, just to culture the community besides Nickel Beach and besides events, to actually put some signage up all year round in the downtown areas that designate certain areas as designated smoking areas. So albeit the sidewalks and the roads might be exempt, we may want to consider signage, and we might want to discuss this with the BIA first, or the BIAs, in those areas of congregation, like West Street, Clarence Street, King Street, where you can have 24/7, 365 designated smoking areas. They're obviously exempt at our parks. They're obviously enforceable at our parks. They're enforceable at the Valley Center, the obvious areas, soccer fields, baseball fields, etc. But they're exempt in the downtown areas. And there's no difference between walking down the street with somebody in front of you with a smoke in their mouth, with your kids beside you, walking down the sidewalk, enjoying West Street, or even having a refreshment or a bite to eat, and having somebody next to you smoking that doesn't have any respect. So there may be, you may want to consider taking this a step further with respect to those areas of congregation, like the downtown areas, because that'll help culture the community with respect to designated smoking areas. So food for thought, it's on the table, it's your call. Councillor Danch.
I'd be 6'9" if I hadn't smoked for those years as well. I do agree with you. I'm a non-smoker, have been for 10, 12 years, and I got to agree with this designated smoking area, but if we're going to do this designated thing, can we have an ashtray there? Because I hate freaking cigarette butts. Those butts will last about 10 years in the environment. And if you want to see a good example, just go down here some days because it's disgusting. We're all in agreement. I don't think we have a smoker in this room, and I give ourselves a lot of credit for that, but get an ashtray for those people.
Thanks, Frank. So can I get some direction from members of council? If you want a little bit of a hand, you know, basically, you know, exemption, support the exemption. I'm sorry, support the bylaw. I keep getting mixed up. Support the bylaw. Recommend designated smoking areas for events. Okay, designated smoking areas all year round on areas of exemption, like sidewalks and streets. And The beach itself as well would have a smoking area. Other than that, everything's smoke-free. Councilor Doucette?
The one area we seem to have forgotten is the marina. Now, the building itself, I understand that, but the docks themselves, I think we need to think that through a bit, because on the boats, they're going to be allowed to smoke. I don't think there's something in there that's like being in their home.
My opinion?
So.
My opinion, whatever it counts for, I wouldn't agree with smoking on the docks. I really wouldn't, because it's a public place. It's very contained. So if you're having a cigarette on the dock, someone's got to walk right through that. You know, they're walking back and forth. Kids are walking back and forth. Parents, grandparents are walking back and forth. And I know, like, when we used to go to the West Side Arena, you go to a junior game in between periods, and you try to walk in that arena or walk out. It's like you're just trying to make your way through that. You know, I'm surprised the fire department's not called. But you know, and it's the same thing on the dock. And plus, on the dock, there's fuel. There's different flammable materials. So you know, I deliberately left that one out in terms of the marina. People can go on shore. They can go on their boat if that's what their privy is. But at the end of the day, you know, the docks themselves, I wouldn't be supportive of that. So essentially, again, Council, what you're looking at is you're looking at bylaw, smoke-free areas, all public areas. The only exemptions that you're considering this evening are designated smoking areas during events, designated smoking areas all year round in places of congregation like your downtown areas, but we should discuss that with the BIA, so I would add that as part of the motion. And lastly, at Nickel Beach, there would be a designated smoking area as well. Other than that, smoke-free. So do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Elliott, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments to that? Staff, any questions or comments? Harry, go ahead.
I think it's a good move in terms of compromise. One thing I would really say, in the first year of this bylaw being implemented, the big push is on education. So there will be, you know, rather than enforcement, they're going to be out there blitzing with education. The region is putting quite a bit of money into the educational phase of this to get it out there, and I think there are a lot of good points being made in terms of parks and open space in those areas where kids and families and others congregate. The designated areas certainly will come with its own challenges, because it does add in terms of what we can provide as a designated area. Now, do they want to sit? Do they want to stand? So there's a lot of considerations that staff have to contemplate. And in fairness, you know, with all the operations parks who really are the inheritors of this scenario, in fairness to them too. You know, where there's a will, there's a way, and we'll just have to discuss that, I think, in all due respect. So, but the educational component cannot be underestimated. Hopefully that public opinion sways the judgment of better practice to, you know, a smoke-free environment, whether that's going to be the sort of the utopian approach to, you know, a smoke-free community or not. But it is certainly something that across the province is becoming more and more the norm. So it's.
Thanks, Harry. And just an FYI, guys, there's no reason why we, when I say we, I mean primary staff, have the control of how many designated areas there are. It can be one. It doesn't have to be 50 of them. It can be one. Second point is, you can do away with the designated smoking areas at any time. So I think this is a good bridging. And lastly, I agree with Councillor Danch. If we are going to designate smoking areas, we should make sure there's proper receptacles there for obvious reasons. Harry?
I'm not sure if Ron might know a little bit more, but I think they, the province at some point when the Smoke-Free Act came into play, and I don't know how many years ago, but they basically removed receptacles, smoking ashtray things from public areas. And I wasn't sure for what reason. I don't know if Ron might be able to elaborate, or Dan might know a little bit more, but again, we'd look into that, see what it is we can supply, because there's certain ashtrays and things like that definitely we're not permitted to provide. I mean, glass, obviously.
I know in front of some places they have those tubes.
Yeah, there are some items out there, but again, it becomes a cost factor, and we'll have to look at those options.
Good. Okay. Any further questions or comments? Great discussion, guys. I think you really hit the reality of it with respect to taking the next steps towards a smoke-free community. With that, your pleasure to the vote and to the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried unanimously. Thank you, members. Okay, we'll now move on to item 7. Councillor Elliott.
Department of Fire and Emergency Services, report number 2013-3, subject Fire and Emergency Services delivery of core services, that that City Council adopt the current core deliverable services as recommended by the Long-Term Master Plan Committee, and further, that City Council direct the appropriate city staff to prepare an addendum to the city's establishing and regulating bylaw 5054/109/07 for the City of Port Colborne Fire and Emergency Services, establishing the core deliverable services.
A second to that, please. Councillor Butters, questions or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions to the chief, and on a small section. Page 66, where it says, public liaison officer has provided some relief to fire prevention, but once vacated, all of those duties will either fall back to fire prevention officer or will have to be dispersed in another manner. There may also have to be some service delivery adjustment. Fire chief had hoped to maintain the current funding level in 2013 in the budget, allowing for the deputy chief's position to be established in 14. Chief's position will allow for the redistribution of work currently being done by others within the department. I know that the previous council changed what they wanted the fire prevention officer to do and gave him some extra duties and some services that he was providing. I'm going to ask that you and Mike get together, compile us a list of services that aren't mandatory and would free up time for him once the public liaison officer is no longer around. I know that we had issues, and I've heard you speak to it several times before, that Mike is tied up doing other business other than his own. And is there business that we don't have to have him do that's not mandated by the Fire Prevention Act, that doesn't lessen fire safety in town, but that you can reduce his workload and allow him to focus on the things that he needs to focus on? And I don't know if any of those are included in the core services, but I think if we're going to manage our assets, and I think I've got a feeling from council that we didn't really want to go with the deputy chief, and if we're going to lighten the load for Mike as the fire prevention officer, can we reduce some of his duties or services that he has to do, that maybe he doesn't need to do, that aren't mandated, and we can reduce his workload so that we can get him back on track?
Thank you,
just
Councillor.
look for comment from you.
Chief.
Your Worship, to Councillor Elliott, I will let you know that Mike and I have had several discussions. The Master Planning Committee have had these types of discussions also. The intent is, that's why the report's written the way it is, that prior to 14, Council will have an opportunity to review what is available, what recommendations will be, whether we reduce services, find other methods, which way we can do it. Those are the types of things we're looking at the present time.
Thanks, Chief. That's fine. Further questions or comments, members? With none, all those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Elliott. We'll now move on to item 10. Councillor Elliott.
Anybody else want to read?
You were the one that jumped up first.
Well, nobody else was putting their hand up, and I was thinking, okay, we'll kind of catch everything all in one. Department of Planning and Development, report number 2013-31, subject agreement of purchase and sale, 235-2347 Ontario Inc. on the road machining. One, that the council enter into an agreement of purchase and sale with 235-2347 Ontario Inc. on the road machining for the purchase of Part 1 on Plan 59R-14881 for $20,000 plus HST, attached here 2. 2, that the mayor and clerk and city solicitor be authorized to sign and execute any and all documents respecting the sale of these land.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder, please. Councillor Kenny, questions or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Just a couple of quick questions, because I don't see a map on here. What are they buying? What size of property are they buying? Obviously, it's in our newly acquired lands on Invertos, which leads me to the next question. We sold them a chunk of land. How are we dividing up this parcel of land to be accessible, receptive to any other business that would like to come to town?
Mr. Jacqueline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you to Councillor Elliott, and I apologize. In my report, I should have said the actual acreage, and what I normally do is that, and this report didn't contain that, but it is 2 acres of land. a reference plan was created, and we looked at all the potential availability of the remaining lands, being 23 acres now, because there was 25 acres that we acquired. There's 23 acres available, and there is still plenty of access to those lands to the east and to the north.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Aquilina. That's fine? No, go ahead.
Can you give us a reference plan of how we're gonna, have we decided how we're gonna subdivide the whole property, or are we just gonna kind of see who comes and what chunks they want?
Mr. Aquilina?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Elliott, what we did was when we looked at the map and looked at that 25 acres of land, this company wanted 2 acres in order for them to build their 6,200 square foot building and then potentially expand in the future. What we haven't done, and I know that our general manager of economic development has some interest in the remaining lands, so at this juncture right now, we just created the one reference plan to carve off 2 acres, leaving 23 acres of potential land for any other available business to come to the city.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, do you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are several interested parties in the other lands. However, part of the reason why I wasn't sure if I was going to be asked to comment, several of those interested parties do require between 25 and 30 acres. Closer to 30 acres. This will rule out a couple other interested parties because the property will become too small.
Thank you. Councillor?
Well, that's not good news. But it is what it is. We've got one in hand and a couple in the bush, so keep working with them, see what we can possibly do, and we'll just move on. It's great to see a company come to town. I just didn't know where we were locating them, obviously on the land, Babcock-Wilcox. I just didn't know if we had divided up the rest of it, so good work.
I think what's happening now is we're getting a lot of interest with respect to the 30 or 40 job companies and smaller, which is great. That's what our economy is today. However, Stephen is also getting some interest from some bigger companies, you know, the 100, 150,000 square feet and 100 to 150 jobs, which is good news, and they're beyond kicking tires. I think one, and I'll say this, and Bob might kick me, but at the end of the day, we also have to start really getting our head around the east side industrial lands, especially as it relates to servicing those east side industrial lands. So Stephen right now is in discussions with not only our staff, our team here, with respect to how we're going to do that, more importantly, how council is going to decide to pay for that, because as you know, you can look, when you look at the entire inventory of lands that we do have on the east side under the industrial land study, you're looking at close to $25 to $26 million to service that entire area. But as we move ahead with people that are interested in those lands, we can chip away at that with their involvement. So Stephen's in some discussions with the private sector, the partner in servicing those lands as well. So we can't lose sight of that as well. You know, it's things that we'd love to talk about publicly, but we just can't yet because of the people that are involved in the discussions. But nevertheless, those discussions are being had right now as we speak. Going back to the Babcock lands, it's very difficult to go in there and do like we did years ago and subdivide all that up, because then you might be speculating on putting a lot of money into the ground when you necessarily don't need to if you have someone that owns 25 to 30 acres. Okay. Further questions or comments? Members of council? With none, all those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Great job, guys. Okay, we'll now move on to item 12. Councillor Elliott.
Department of Engineering and Operations, Engineering Division Report Number 2013-16, subject Niagara Region Water and Wastewater Service Delivery Review. That the Council of the City of Port Colborne receives this report for information purposes, and further, the Council confirms to the Region of Niagara that they do not support the further expenditure of monies for the implementation of a single-tier governance model for the delivery of water and wastewater services in the region.
Have a second to that, please. Councillor Doucette. As I said to members of council earlier, and I think Ron would attest to this, a lot of the information, and even after this report was drawn up, there was still information coming in from the region, Ron? That's correct. What I would suggest council do is, and not only for this report, by the way, for item 12, but also for item 14, with respect to council reorg and electoral systems, is to defer both of those to a business planning session. I think it deserves a lot more discussion. We'll, you know, both those issues will take us to 4 o'clock in the morning tonight.
Bachelor's
It's up to you guys, but I think both these issues, they deserve a lot of discussion. I don't think, quite frankly, with the information that we have at hand to date, we can actually make a decision on item 12, because the information is still coming in. And I'm led to believe from our staff, as well as other municipal staffs across the region, that you haven't been afforded all the information on a timely fashion. And with that, this report may not contain the information that they simply don't have. And with that, I just think it's unfair for the region to make, they're discussing this tomorrow at Public Works. I'm at Public Works tomorrow, this is on our agenda. And then therefore, it's going to be ratified the following Thursday at Regional Council. That's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous that the region would expect this out of all 12 municipalities, never mind just Port Colborne. And I know Lincoln's got a big problem with this. I know Grimsby's got a big problem with this. And some other municipalities have a big problem with this. So I would recommend that a member of council defer this to a business planning session, to have proper discussion, and then therefore, from that discussion, proper understanding, and then proper recommendation back to the region. Councilor Elliott.
I'll move that we'll just receive it. You want to defer it to a business planning session? At the same time, can we do it at item 14 as well?
Well,
Can we do them together? You want to do them separate?
Let's do 12. I'll jump over to 14 next. You can present
Yeah, and
that
we'll
as
do
well.
that.
And we'll do it separately.
Yep, so I'll just make the motion that we defer this to business planning session.
Okay, and Mr. Howe, when would that be?
Worship, this is timely. I'm going to suggest the first available Monday, maybe next Monday, or it'll be the one after that,
Okay.
after council.
My intent, by the way, members of council, is to also defer this tomorrow at Public Works. Can't guarantee I'm going to be successful or not, but I think having a sort of a good year around the horseshoe, it's not going to be very hard, because I think a lot of other municipalities are sharing the same concern. Now, it is deferral, so there's no discussion.
So when you go tomorrow, I want you to ask the question, regional level, and then do that.
Okay, let me hold off on yours, just to allow Councillor Kenny to ask a question. Go ahead, Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. On page 112 of the report, it says that rates will have to be increased exponentially in all local area municipalities to address the needs in areas that have not been diligent in addressing their infrastructure deficits in the past. I want you to tell them. Port Colborne has done that. So I want to know how we're getting off on that. Are we paying for everybody else if it becomes a regional thing? And I think that's exactly what will happen. We'll do that. And then it says that some are not in full compliance when we are in full compliance. So, Your Worship, with all due respect, I want you to go there and hammer that home.
That's not like me, B.
I know. I just wanted to give you a little encouragement.
The hammer part is.
Thank you.
I was being facetious, Councillor. Absolutely, Councillor. That's my intent, and I have been already. And I know Councillor Steele, sitting on the subcommittee, has as well. So rest assured, the message is getting across loud and clear. So with that, members, we do have a deferral, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Desmarais. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. I think that would be more of a referral to a business planning session than a deferral. Okay, Councillor Elliott, let's go to item 14, please.
And just to comment on what Councillor Kenny said, we had the discussion before. I mean, we've got to find out more information from the region, what they're going to upload. I mean, we've been diligent in operations and run. I mean, we've been on top of it, trying to fix everything, our pipes.
Absolutely.
Some of the municipalities are bad, and it's the discussion we had. I mean, if the region's going to take it over, and they're going to take the debt, do we just go and do a $20 million debenture and fix a whole bunch of pipes, and here, you guys can take the pipes, and here's the money that you owe for them, too. So, I mean, that discussion's got to be had at the region as well, too. So, item number
14.
14? Oh, that's right, too. No, we're going to do 14 because we're just going to,
Deferred as well?
I'm not reading the whole thing. Department of Community and Corporate Services Clerks Division Report Number 2013-15, Subject Review of Ward and At-Large Electoral Systems and Council Composition.
Okay, we'll hold it off on that because it is a page and a half, so we'll let him off the hook, Ron. Go ahead. Actually, you know what, Counselor? Why don't you take the time and read it? And the reason why I ask that, Counselor, is not to be smart, but for those folks that are watching on COGECO, that may want to attend the business planning session, just for your information, for you folks watching, the one that we deferred earlier was having to do with water, wastewater. The region is investigating a one-tier versus two-tier system. Currently, we have a two-tier system whereby the region basically treats and wholesales water as well as cleans our wastewater. What we do at the local level is we distribute it. We distribute the water through our distribution system as well as through our wastewater system. The debate that's happening now is whether the region should take it all or it should continue as a two-tier system. What we're talking about now with respect to item 14 is with respect to the possible review and changes of ward, at-large electoral systems, and council reorganization. Should this council continue to be 8 versus 6 or 4? Should we continue to have 4 wards or have 1 at-large? And therefore, councillors would be required to run at-large versus in their respective wards. So those are some of the discussions that were had. And with that said, Council, and I apologize, but
that's
just
okay.
for their information, if they want to attend those meetings and make delegation,
Certainly.
They should have an idea of what we're talking about. Go ahead.
And for those watching at home, if you need a bathroom break or anything like that, now would be the time to go. This report outlines various options concerning the city's electoral system and council composition. Relevant options are outlined under the appropriate heading below. The approval of one option respecting each subject is respectfully requested. Council may determine to provide direction not otherwise outlined in this report. The electoral system. Council is requested to choose from one of the following options with respect to the city's electoral system. Option 1, dissolution of wards in favor of an at-large system. That a bylaw be submitted to Council to dissolve the existing wards in accordance with Section 222 of the Municipal Act 2001 in order to move to an at-large election system beginning with the 2014 municipal elections following public notice and public consultation. Or option 2, ward boundary review. That the city clerk be directed to initiate the process of conducting a ward boundary review and report back concerning the issuance of an RFP for professional services, legislative parameters, and administrative requirements. Or option 3, combination of ward and at-large system. That the city clerk be directed to initiate the process of implementing a combination ward and at-large system, report back concerning the issuance of an RFP for professional services, legislative parameters, and administrative requirements. Or option 4, question on the ballot. That a question be included on the ballot for the 2014 municipal election concerning the dissolution of the city's wards in favor of an at-large electoral system, and that the city clerk be directed to report back respecting legislative requirements and recommended wording of the question. Or option 5, reestablishment of the committee to review electoral matters. That the committee to review electoral matters be reestablished with the purpose undertaking a review and reporting back to Council concerning ward versus at-large electoral systems, and that the city clerk be directed to report back with regard to the process for the reestablish of said committee. Or option 6, status quo, maintain the current ward system. The Community and Corporate Services Clerk's Division Report 2013-15 be received for information that the city's current electoral system be maintained. Council composition. Council is requested to choose from one of the following options with respect to council composition. Option 1, change in council composition. That a bylaw be submitted to Council to change the current composition of Council to a total number of blank members, including the mayor, in accordance with Section 217 of the Municipal Act 2001, of the Committee to Review Electoral Matters. That the Committee to Review Electoral Matters be reestablished with the purpose of undertaking a review and reporting back to Council concerning council composition, and that the city clerk be directed to report back with regard to the process for the reestablishment of said committee. Or option 4, status quo, maintain current council composition. The Community and Corporate Services Clerk's Division Report 2013-15 be received for information, and that the current composition of City Council be maintained.
Well done. And you did it in one breath. So members of council, what does that all mean? I think at the end of the day, all that means is a discussion with respect to either we go to status quo, the composition of council. I know, for example, Niagara Falls has 8 councillors and a mayor. The city of Port Colborne has 8 councillors and a mayor. The town of Foote Erie has 6 councillors and a mayor. So that's the first consideration is council composition. The second consideration is whether we go at large or we stick to ward boundaries. All municipalities in Niagara are different. We have some that are large, and we have some that have wards, continue to have wards. So I think ultimately, in a nutshell, that's what we're going to be discussing. Amount of councillors, and of course, wards versus at large, or do we stay with the status quo? Okay. So I think, is there a motion to defer?
I will put the motion forward,
To
except
refer.
Councillor Demery wants to ask a question. So
Does anybody have a comment or question first before I go to referral?
She was going to second.
Okay, mover and seconder to refer it? Okay, you moved it, the original one, so I'm gonna go with Councillor Demery.
Yeah.
And then Councillor Kenny to refer it to business planning?
I thought we were referring it to a committee to discuss.
No, we haven't made that decision.
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm asking you guys for direction, so you referring it to business planning? Okay, and out of business planning B, that can be a recommendation. Okay, so I have mover and seconder, all those in favor? Opposed, that will be carried. Did you want to make comment?
On dates.
Okay, on date and time. Now, just to throw something else out at you guys, and you may have read in the newspaper about the discussions that we've been having on transit. And don't even go there, okay, Doucette? However, one of the things that I recommended at the region, obviously not understood by everybody, but I did recommend it, was to take the information that we had accrued over the past 2 years at the region with respect to the pilot project for transit, and all the information, as of late, we even had a presentation by the consultants to bring back to the municipalities. And the intent of that recommendation that I made at the region was to ensure that the ultimate report that identifies the direction of transit Niagara is driven from the bottom up. I don't like using those words, bottom up, because I think we're all on the same level, but apparently some people still think that way. But from the municipalities, present the information to the municipalities, and then take that information that the municipalities then, through their input, based on the information they received that's been accrued over the 1.5 years, 2 years from the consultants, and the ultimate report that goes to regional council to decide what direction they want to take, that report is made up from the input from each municipality. So we are going to need a business planning session for transit as well, so that we can have the region come down and make a presentation to us with respect to the information that they've accrued over the last 1.5 years, 2 years, and then receive municipal input in terms of what our expectations are with respect to transit. So just a heads up that I would like to do that sometime in late June, early July. We'll make it separate from this business planning, but again, I think it's very important with some of these discussions that are happening at the region that require municipal input. We just simply don't have time to deal with them in our council agendas. They need more discussion. And at the region, that's what we do at the region. When there's certain issues, and Ron can probably relate to this when he was at the region as well, when there's certain issues that deserve that length of discussion, we set aside a Thursday, we call it a business planning session, and we deal with whether it's governance, whether it's transit, whether it's water, wastewater, just those subjects alone, so it gets that discussion, it gets that time. So there's 3 that we're looking at now is water, wastewater. We're looking at large, which we're going to vote on now, but just a heads up following those 2, we're going to be looking at transit as well with respect to having that discussion at a business planning session. Okay. Okay, so Barb, I just wanted to give you a heads up on that one, because I don't want to catch you guys off guard in the summer months with all these business planning sessions, because I know you guys go away and all that. So I'm trying to give you a heads up now that these are the things that are coming down from the region. So we had water, wastewater that we deferred or referred to a business planning session. We're now going to vote on the electoral systems. That's not going to be referred to a business planning session, both of which deserve that discussion, that time. And then the third one, I'm just giving you a heads up on, at a different business planning session, after what Bob's going to propose today in terms of date, is transit. So we got 3 on the hook right now from the region that we're going to be looking at during business planning. Okay? So going back to this one, with respect to electoral, I need my glasses, system, as well as council composition. Motion to refer to business planning, been moved by Councillor Desmarais, seconded by Councillor Kenny. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. Okay, so we have those two. Bob, dates on business planning.
Your worship, can I propose Monday, June the 17th, that's a week tonight, beginning at 5:30? I know there are members of council that will not be able to make it, but they have other commitments. Beginning at 5:30, or alternatively could be Tuesday the 18th. That's a possibility also.
Barb?
I know
Barb?
Monday.
Go ahead, Barb.
Well, for these business planning meetings, like, I just think that it's going to be really important that, you know, every single person is here, especially with the well, for any of the matters, but certainly the electoral matters. So, you know, like we're missing Bill Steele tonight, you know. So are you saying either June 17th or June 18th?
Mr. Howe?
Your worship, I want to find a date that's as suitable as possible for members of council. Any night next week, if you want to try it, if all the members of council, I'm proposing now to start Monday, and if nobody can make it, or if there are too many missing, then perhaps Tuesday. If need be, even Wednesday.
Wednesday would be better for us.
Or Thursday.
You know, guys, at one time we used to have every Monday meetings, and we cut it back to every second Monday. But, you know, what I would suggest we do is try to get these done as quickly as possible before summer. You know, 17th, 18th, 19th, next week, I'll leave it up to you guys for the 2 that we discussed tonight. And then I think we should also, after that, discuss transit. So again, that's why I'm giving you a heads up. So we're going to be a little bit busy between now and I know summer's here, but it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. Let's squeeze a bit more in before summer, guys, before, okay? So we're looking at, let's concentrate on this first. We got the 17th, 18th, and 19th.
The 17th could work, 18th I had a family dinner and I'm not missing it because it's for my birthday and my anniversary.
So you're
And
okay?
it's her birthday.
How's the 17th for everybody? No good?
I could do it that night, but 19th will work.
Well, you can go the next week.
Okay, so how about the 19th? I know it's a
The
Canadians
19th
meeting.
would work.
No, you're here on the 19th? You're not here on the 19th.
On the road on the 19th.
How about the 25th?
The 20th, there's no problem.
Tuesday.
Anytime
Tuesday the
after that,
25th.
till the end of July, I'm here.
25th?
We all good on the 25th?
No,
We all good on
I'm
the
not gonna-
25th?
I'm not going to be here. I already made plans for family.
24th, we got a council meeting? 26th?
That works for me.
Ron? You're gone that week? Ron?
Yeah, I'm driving back across from Canada, from Vancouver Island back.
On the 26th?
No, leaving on the 22nd.
So can you make it back by the 26th?
No, I've got to be home for the airport commission.
I'm not here that week.
Yeah, but then I got to see the AGM that night. That's why I wanted to leave
25th?
that meeting.
Okay, let's not waste time on this tonight. Let's Bob, send some dates out. Use that thing that we use for the night, the sport commission. What is it called? What's that thing called?
And I can't not be there because Rayleigh's in.
Yeah, there's a,
Yeah, well, we use
there's a
that.
date, there's a date thing. I forget what they call it. Anyways, let's throw that out, see what everybody's good for. Let's nail this down. Okay? Good. Okay, moving on.
So should we get a date?
Number 13, Councillor Elliott.
Department of Engineering and Operations Engineering Division Report Number 2013-21, Subject 2013-21 Citywide Road Resurfacing 2-year duration. That the Council of the City of Port Colborne award tender 2013-8 Citywide Road Resurfacing 2-year duration to Rankin Construction Incorporated of St. Catharines, Ontario, with a submitted tender price of $1,421,702 in 2013 and $1,450,136.04 in 2014, plus applicable taxes. Staff is utilizing the bid items as listed within the awarded tender document in such a manner as to complete all works, all the while keeping within the annual budget allocation by council. Further, that a contract bylaw whereby the city enters into a contract agreement with the contractor be prepared, all pending annual budget approvals for each of these years mentioned. B, that funding for the tender number 013-08 be financed under account 3-550-33129-3326.
Thank you, Councillor. Second for
28,
that, please.
sorry.
Councillor Butters, questions or comments? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Two questions. It says, staff noted that the bid submitted by Brennan Paving was found to have abnormal numbers quoted listed within the tender submission. After seeking an opinion from legal counsel on the matter, and in following the advice of said legal counsel, it is staff's recommendation that the bid submitted by Brennan Paving be rejected as being unbalanced and therefore be disqualified. That's my first question. Can somebody explain to me why that happened? I've never seen that on a bid before.
Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not that uncommon. It does happen, sometimes by error and sometimes intentionally. One of the major items in the bid submitted by Brennan Paving contained an inadvertently low unit price. And in doing that, they wouldn't have been able to complete the items under that particular task in the road budget. So as a staff, we got together and discussed the unbalanced item and the requirements under the tender documents, and we were of the opinion that the bid should be disqualified as unbalanced. But just to confirm that, we run it by our legal counsel. They agreed with us 100% that that was the route to go, and therefore we disqualified the bid. The bid then goes to Rankin Construction.
Councillor.
If it's an erroneous mistake, did they not have an opportunity to correct it? I mean, if it was easily identifiable, I know that the bids are sealed and then they're opened, but if there's an obvious mistake, is it, you don't have the opportunity to correct it if it's that readily identifiable?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it's not that, it's not a mathematical error. It was an error in submitting the price for that particular item. That put their price at slightly lower than the second bid of Rankin, but they would not have been able to do the work under that we assume that it's an error on the item and it's inadvertently low. Something was missed in formulating the prices for that item. So in fact, there would have been a lot of money, several $100,000 of money left on the table in terms of the price if it were to be accepted. And we're probably of the opinion that they probably wouldn't have entered into the contract for that price, probably would have backed out of it. But we didn't get to that stage.
Councillor.
The price, just to partially answer your question, the price can't be changed after the fact.
Okay,
they can't resubmit it once the prices are known. The prices are read out during the tender opening.
Okay, so you're saying that the price that they come in at was so low that they couldn't have completed the work at the price
on
that
that particular item, they would have taken a substantial loss based on the error in that item, if in
Okay.
fact it was an error.
And you know what the next question is, like, did we ask them if they could? Maybe that was that not a legitimate bid?
Mr. Hanson.
And I've never seen it before.
It could be, and could be also construed as punishing one of the contractors for making an error on the bid. We did, in fact, contact Brennan Paving. We gave them our opinion on it, and we included our legal opinion on it, and we didn't get a response back from that. They accepted what we were saying in terms of the prices, so we went on that basis. It would have been probably unprofessional to try to punish the contractor and make a mistake, and then for that particular item, building up all the work we have on our road system based on that particular item and really beating them on the price. So that's not the way to proceed on a contract basis, so
Okay.
we decided not to proceed that way.
Okay, and just one other question to you. With regards to it, under item C, other options, it says, if council rejects the recommendation of staff and the city's legal counsel, the city could then be leaving itself open to potential litigation. I've never seen that on on a bid process before. Could you explain that?
Mr. Hanson?
Well, we would probably, if we were to reject the recommendation of hire Rankin and reject the opinion of the legal counsel, we'd probably have to go to a retender. We would then be open to possible litigation from the bidder that did bid the project in good faith. It's not necessarily, that wouldn't necessarily happen, but we were left with one bidder, the contractor who has done the work in past years. It wouldn't make a lot of sense to reject that bid as well and then go to retender and probably get some a new tender back in when the prices now are known to any other bidders wanting to do it. So we think this is a proper route to go and not go that route.
Okay, it just, I'd never seen that written on any of our RFPs or bids before, and when I read it, I'm like, well, wait a minute. I was under the impression that council had the ultimate authority whether or not they wanted to accept any bid or throw them all aside and take it back out to tender again.
Yes,
And
they
that's
do.
why it kind of caught me off, like, I'd never seen that before, and I just wanted
Yes,
an
in fact, they
explanation.
do. And if council were to take a certain position, as was suggested here, and talking to our lawyers, that we could open ourselves, even though it was council's decision, we could still be open to litigation from any of the contractors who bid it and weren't satisfied with that particular decision.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments on this report? Ladies? No further questions or, do I have to split you guys up? Yes. Yeah, let's go there. I'll put Angie right where Frank is, or Frank, I'll put you right where B is. How's that? Members, with no further questions or comments, all those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to the last item of this evening. Councillor Desmarais, item 17.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay. Email correspondence from Robert Heil, Re 7 Berkeley, removal of a tree. The arborist report anticipated and will be circulated upon receipt. We do have that here. That the email correspondence, Re 7 Berkeley Avenue, removal of a tree be received for information, and if the tree is healthy, take no action, or alternatively, council direction is required.
Do we have a seconder to that? Councillor Doucette, questions or comments? Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have here an email from city staff. Chris Lee has sent the following. Dwight and I have met on the site with the arborist to discuss the boulevard tree at Dolphin and Berkeley. In the arborist's opinion, the tree is very healthy, as is evident by the fact that that it is currently attempted to spread, which is new shoots that are continually having to be cut on the residents' lawns. The reason for that this growth is occurring is due to the fact that Hydro, CNP, recently trimmed and pruned the tree, and its natural reaction to the pruning is to expand its domain through the root system. They recommended not removing the tree, but instead to prune as necessary and eventually establishing a decorative shape or profile. I have spoken with the residents of this property. They really do want the tree cut down, and I do understand what they're saying. It is, it's a problem for them. It creates a lot of extra work. This is, according to this email, the roots are coming up because the tree is pruned. According to the residents, the roots have been coming up all along before the tree was pruned as well. So I really don't know how to say that. I can just say that the tree is healthy. It does look healthy. Looks a little odd right now because it was pruned severely. But I can just say the residents would like it taken down, and that's where it stands.
It's on city property?
Yes,
it is. Okay. Further questions or comments, members? Now, Councillor, you did receive it for information, but I'm going to keep it open for you before I go to a vote and allow you the opportunity to offer or request direction from council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would, I do understand that we have a policy not to cut down healthy trees. And I will say this tree is healthy. There's no disputing that. The residents, however, do want the tree to come down. I don't think it's fair that the taxpayers be burdened with the cost of removing that tree if it is healthy and it is within city policy. but I would think that it may be fair to offer the residents the opportunity to pay for someone to take the tree down if they want it down that badly. That would be my solution to it.
Are you putting that forward as a recommendation?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do I have a seconder to that? Councillor Danch? Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. Discussion to the motion. Councillor Elliott, Councillor Doucette.
Yeah, I took a drive by to take a look at it, and basically it doesn't cause any safety or health concerns or anything like that. It's just kind of in the middle of the lawn, and yep, the shoots are coming up. It's the one that's inside the sidewalk, right? Yeah, and it still doesn't offer any safety concerns, right? There's no buckling of the sidewalk, there's no anything like that. This is one of those things, I think, where if we make a decision, might as well put a revolving door on for people that don't want a tree somewhere and want to take it down, even if it's at their cost. Tree's a tree. Arborist said it's healthy. I'm going to say leave it up, don't cut our trees down.
Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have a concern with allowing someone else to cut trees on our property. It sets precedent, and then you have a whole group of people out there that don't want them. And they're going to come in and say, you did it for them, why can't you do it for us? I have a concern for that. And I agree with Councillor Elliott. The trees are our tree. If it's a healthy tree, it should stay there. Does it create problems? Yes. Okay? I've got trees around my place, and they create problems. You deal with them. It's as simple as that. And does it give you more work? Yes, it does. But trees also do one other thing. They give us oxygen, guys. Okay? Let's be honest here. And if you don't like the tree, sorry, it's the reason why you're breathing.
Thank you, Councillor Doucette. Further comments or questions, members of council? Further comments or questions? With none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It would be lost. Back to the original motion to receive. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Desmarais. Okay, so that exhausts the items for discussion and debate and decision this evening. We'll now move on to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? We'll now move on to motion to adjourn this portion of tonight's agenda. Councillor Elliott, that arm just flew up. I think your ring stuck to the ceiling there. Seconded by Councillor Doucette. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to the council portion of this evening's agenda. We'll start off, Madam Clerk, with the introduction of any addendum items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, there are no addendum items.
Thank you, Annette. Confirmation of the agenda. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bodnar. Councillor Kenny, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Disclosures of interest. Are there any this evening? With none, we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. I do have one set of minutes, the minutes of the 18th meeting regular of council, dated May 27, 2013. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Elliott, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Are there any items requiring a separate discussion? Mover and seconder for those items. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Bodnar, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. I do have one proclamation this evening, members. I'll be looking for a mover and seconder for this proclamation. That whereas the province of Ontario, in partnership with many non-government organizations, like the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, has declared Saturday, July 6th through Sunday, July 14th, 2014 as a license-free fishing week. And whereas Ontario Family Fishing Events celebrates 20 years of license-free fishing this summer. Now therefore, I, Mayor Vincent Badaway, do hereby proclaim Saturday, July 6th through Sunday, July 14th, 2013 as Ontario Family Fishing Events here in the city of Port Colborne, Canada's ultimate fishing town. And I encourage the citizens of Port Colborne to participate in the fish festivals the clinics or conservation and educational activities that may be held in the area throughout the entire week here in our community. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Butters, Councillor Kenny, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. I do have one set of minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. The minutes of the downtown Port Colborne BIA meeting dated May 8th, 2013. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Butters, Councillor Desmarais. Is there something I'm missing here? Did you want to share something with the rest of council? No? Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you, council. Are there any notices of motion this evening, members? Bob, B's asking if you're paying attention or not. Stop that, B. No notices of motion, members of council. With none, we'll move on to the introduction of the bylaws. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Bylaw number 5964/70/13, being a bylaw to close temporarily to vehicular traffic sections of various streets for purposes of the 2013 Flavors of Niagara Food, Wine, and Music Festival. Bylaw number 5965/71/13, being a bylaw to close temporarily to vehicular traffic sections of various streets for purposes of the 2013 Festival Saint Jean Baptiste. Bylaw number 5966/72/13, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 5054/109/07, being a bylaw to establish and regulate the City of Port Colborne Fire and Emergency Services Composite. Bylaw number 5967/73/13, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement extension with Blue Knight Security for parking enforcement. Bylaw number 5968/74/13, being a bylaw to authorize entering into an agreement of purchase and sale with 2352347 Ontario Inc. on the road machining regarding Part 1 on Plan 59R-14881, vacant land north side, Invertos Drive. Bylaw number 5969/75/13, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Rankin Construction, Inc., re-tender 2013-08, citywide road resurfacing, 2-year duration.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Questions or comments, members? Ron, just one question with respect to the road resurfacing contract. We spoke about the possibility of getting paving done at the Valley Center. I think it was obvious this winter that we had some challenges with parking. So I've been talking with staff about the possibility of doing some paving to the west of the facility. Is there an opportunity to bundle that in with this contract?
We could certainly talk to the low bidder and get a price. The work to build a parking lot is somewhat different than the resurfacing on roads. So
Right.
we could take some of those prices and talk to them about it and see if they'd be amenable to building the parking lots for us.
I'm just trying to get some economies here in
Right.
terms of economies of scale.
Yeah, there might be some there. With us spending upwards of $900,000, there might be some economy. But there's always a risk in doing that, in that if you went to tender and brought a couple smaller guys in,
Gotcha.
you could get a lower price. So
Okay.
we can do it either way.
Okay, thanks, Ron. All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Madam Clerk, the confirmatory bylaw, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Bylaw number 5970/76/13, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of June 10th, 2013.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Bodnar, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. I'm going to keep you here all night, Kenny. Before I ask for a motion to go into closed session, I do want to announce our upcoming meetings. We do have a meeting scheduled for Monday, June 24th, 2013, here in the chamber, beginning at 6:30 p.m., Committee of the Whole as well as Council. Following that, July 8th, 2013, once again, Committee of the Whole and Council, again here in the chamber, beginning at 6:30 p.m. I would encourage residents to keep an eye on the website for dates for our business planning sessions. We have some pretty big decisions to make, and I think it would be helpful if residents participated in those decisions by attending, if you desire, some of the meetings that we have upcoming with respect to water wastewater, one-tier versus two-tier, with respect to electoral boundaries, as well as council composition, and finally with respect to regional transit versus the current system. So with those issues on the hook, we will have on our website sooner rather than later, I hope, dates of those business planning sessions, and by all means, residents that may have some interest in any one of those or all of those issues, by all means, you're invited to participate in those discussions. So with that, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session. That council do not proceed in camera in order to address the following matters. A, the minutes of the closed session portions of the April 22nd, 2013 regular meeting, as well as the April 29th, 2013 special meeting, May 13th, 2013 regular meeting, and May 27th, 2013 regular meetings of council. And B, the confidential correspondence from Lancaster, Brooks and Welch, LLP, providing legal advice concerning a development in the Port Colborne Industrial Park pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Desmarais, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Have a wonderful tourism week, as it is tourism week. Have a wonderful week, and hopefully that rain stops. We have a great week of sunshine ahead of us. Enjoy.